Very good morning to all of you. So now we are entering into the topic of, like I can say, the litigation, demand and recovery. So wherein we are going to discuss the notices which is being sent, how the department can do the demand and can do the recovery. Any idea ki which section they are applying to determine the liability? Any idea that which sections are being applied by the department to determine the liabilities? Sanjay, any notice you have handled? कोई भी notice? No problem. So you have done this particular chapter of assessment and audit, correct? In the same pattern. So they will do the assessment in various provisions. And suppose if audit tell ki that this much of the amount to be recovered, then how this amount will be recovered, how this demand will be created, that will be clarified by this chapter. Now, earlier we have section 73 or section 74. What was the difference in 73 and 74? The main difference was the intention. See, if let's say Mr. A has not paid the taxes or has claimed excess refund or has claimed excess ITC, wrongly availed ITC and utilized ITC or utilized ITC. In that case, what will happen? The intention will be looked in. Suppose if the intention is not malified, not fraudulent, in that case, the demand would be raised under section 73. And if the intention is malified, then demand would be raised in the section 74. These were the two sections. But what happened? There was a different time limit for 73 and different time limit for 74. What was the time limit for 73? 3 years from the due date of annual return. Order has to be issued within 3 years. What about 74? It was the 5 year. Now 73 and 74 both has been merged. Okay. Now let's read. That is section 74A. Yes, it is 74A only. Now read. 74A stipulates the manner in which tax liability of the person should be determined in case of the short payment, non-payment, erroneously refund, wrong availment, or utilization. Please note that this is or. Why I am highlighting? Because if you read the interest section, levy of interest, regarding the ITC 50 subsection 3, they have made the substitution and they have mentioned the word and, availed and utilized, then only the interest would be applicable. अगर आपने सिर्फ wrongly avail किया है, utilize नहीं किया, it is lying in your credit ledger, in that case there would be no levy of interest. But if I talk about demand and recovery chapter, they are not having the word availed and utilized. It is availed or utilized. It provides a uniform mechanism for both fraud and non-fraud cases. Now what I told that both has been merged together, fraud and non-fraud. That is where the short payment, non-payment, erroneous refund, wrong availment or utilization of ITC is by reason of the fraud or willful misstatement or suppression of the fact to evade the taxes or by reason other than fraud, willful misstatement or suppression. तो क्या मतलब हुआ? 74A is the only section by which whether it is fraud or non-fraud, both is being merged. What is the main reason to merge these two provisions together? The problem was time limit. Main problem was time limit because normally 73 talks about the 3 years and 74 talks about the 5 year. For recovering, for making the demand in the 74, officer has to prove the malified intention. If he is unable to prove the malified intention, very interesting thing you should know. Suppose the time limit of 3 years is being crossed and officer has raised the demand of 74, let's say 1 crore. Now, in the higher forum, if he is unable to prove that there was malified intention, the entire proceeding was dropped because when he initiated the demand, he has issued the notice and the notice is being issued after the time limit of 73. तो ये बड़ा प्रॉब्लम होता था कि 73 की टाइम लिमिट के बाद अगर नोटिस इश्यू किया फॉर 74 and officer unable to prove that there was a malified intention, then what happened? The entire proceeding has been dropped, has to be dropped. तो क्या हुआ? ना तो टैक्स मिलेगा डिपार्टमेंट को, ना इंटरेस्ट, ना पेनल्टी, मतलब इवन टैक्स इज ऑल्सो नॉट रिकवरेबल. So therefore, now there is a common time limit. Let's see. There is a slight difference which we will see. तो एक बार कंप्लीट करते, then you will understand. See, there was only one difference now. See, instead of amendment, what they will do? They will make single provision for both. Then why to keep both two separate sections? Now, limitation of period. Still, there is a slight difference. What is that? We will discuss. One of the core principle of the law is that legal proceeding must have an element of certainty. Law of limitation is built on this principle, as any action under any law must be taken within a period prescribed time frame. Otherwise, the dispute would remain open-ended and uncertain. The purpose of the limitation period under tax law is to fix a definite time within which the tax authority can take action, such raising the demand, issuing the notice, or assessment. It ensures that tax matters are not open indefinitely, giving the certainty, and finally, both the taxpayer and the department, the provision of the limitation period gain all the more importance in the legislation dealing with the indirect tax. ठीक है, ये बड़ा कॉन्सेप्ट समझिए, प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस. एंड यू नो द व्हाट इज द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस? एनी आइडिया, बेसिक आइडिया अबाउट द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस? It is our fundamental right. It is our fundamental right. And you will see in the High Court, lot of matter are remanded back just because they have not given the opportunity of being heard. Are you getting my point? Ki lot of matter has been remanded back just because they have not given the opportunity of being heard. ठीक है, क्या मतलब हुआ? बेसिक अंडरस्टैंड करते हैं, उसके बाद रीड करते हैं. मान लो ऑफिसर ने हमें नोटिस इशू किया, ठीक है, एंड उसके अगले दिन डिमांड इशू कर दी। लेट्स से डिमांड ऑर्डर हैज बीन इशूड, whether they have given the time limit to give the reply, whether they have heard what I like to say against the notice. Answer is no. Therefore, these matter in which the natural justice, normal opportunity of being heard has not been given, okay, that will be either quashed or remanded back. In order to adhere the principle of natural justice before raising the demand, a notice has to be issued. How? Generally referred to as so-called notice, asking the person chargeable with the tax to show cause as to why the specified amount of the tax interest penalty should not be demanded from him. तो सो कोज नोटिस होता है ना, कारण बताओ नोटिस, जिसमें वो रीजन बताने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी देता है. द इश्यूएंस ऑफ द सो कोज नोटिस grants an opportunity to defend himself before adjudication. बिफोर एडजुडिकेशन मींस जो केस जिस ईयर का जो वो ऑफिसर डिमांड सोच रहे हैं उसको एडजुडिकेट करेंगे. एडजुडिकेट का मतलब क्या हुआ? असेसमेंट करना उस केस का. उसके पहले वो नोटिस देगा और उससे जवाब मांगेगा मैं क्यों ना तुम्हारे अगेंस्ट में टैक्स इंटरेस्ट पेनल्टी की डिमांड करूं. देन द टैक्स पेयर विल गिव द रिप्लाई स्टेटिंग सो एंड सो रीजन. द पर्सन टू whom the notice has been issued can contest the demand by filing the reply to the so cause notice and also by appearing before the adjudicating authority personally. पर्सनल हियरिंग इसको क्या बोलते हैं? हम लोग जानते हैं पर्सनल हियरिंग. सो यू कैन ऑल्सो रिक्वेस्ट फॉर पर्सनल हियरिंग एज वेल आफ्टर कंसिडरिंग द रिप्लाई फाइल्ड बाय द पर्सन एज वेल एज सबमिशन मेड ड्यूरिंग द पर्सनल हियरिंग. ये भी बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है? लेट मी टेल यू. द एडजुडिकेटिंग authority shall pass the speaking order. Sometime they will simply pass the order whatever they have given the amount in the so cause notice, ignoring the reply given by the taxpayer. Means, example, let's say you are filing your GSTR 3B, correct? While filing the return, there was an ITC appearing in the GSTR 2B, let's say as a 10 lakh rupees. But you have claimed only 2 lakh rupees. Correct? 8 lakh because it was not eligible, so you have not claimed. Ideally, there was a circular 170 which talks about you first claim entire amount and then reverse. Instead of that, he has claimed only 2 lakh rupees. Okay, clear? Now, what happened? Officer has scrutinized the GSTR 2B and they have found one, let's say, car is being purchased of 8 lakh rupees. जिसका टैक्स कंपोनेंट कितना था? 8 lakh rupees. Now they've raised the demand that why this 8 lakh? So you have taken excess availment of ITC of 8 lakh. There was an ITC appearing in the GSTR 2B of 8 lakh. You have claimed, so kindly pay along with interest and penalty. I am a recipient taxpayer. I have given the reply, sir. ITC was 10 lakh because I know that I was not eligible as per 17.5. So I have claimed only 2 lakh. So therefore, 8 lakh, which I have not claimed, so the demand is not sustainable or valid. Now, what officer has did? Officer has raised the order. Again, 10 lakh rupees, 8 lakh rupees. Now, without looking into my actual claim, without looking into my reply, they have given the same demand which was in the so cause notice. What does it mean? It means they have not considered my reply. And again, I can tell you, friend, there are a lot of judgments in which, when the reply was not considered, the matter has been quashed by the higher authority and shall pass an speaking order. What is the meaning of speaking order? That is also very important in the demand and recovery. Suppose if the order says that this 8 lakh rupees is being payable by you, fine, no problem. But what is the reason of 8 lakh? They have not given in the demand itself. They simply raise the demand order and 8 lakh rupees interest penalty. 8 lakh का क्या reason है कुछ नहीं बताया. In that case again, order is there, but order is not speaking. You can, I think you have also heard that particular point, that various time registration has been cancelled, but they are simply saying other. What is the reason cancellation? They are saying other. It means, what is other? Other could be various things, right? One more example. Section 122, penalty section. Penalty has, like section 122, subsection 1 has the 21 clauses. Officer has raised the demand of 10,000 rupees, that we are raising the demand of 122 of rupees 10,000. Is that a speaking order? Again, answer is no. Because under which section they are levying the penalty, it should be clearly mentioned. Because 122 is not only one provision, it has 3 subsections. Under subsection 1, there are 21 clauses. So what is the mistake done by the taxpayer has to be clearly mentioned. Otherwise, that order will not be called as a speaking order. My dear friend, I like to tell you, when you in your future, when you litigate the matter, everything is correct. Assume that everything is correct, but just because they have not given the speaking order, entire demand would be quashed. Okay. Section 74. So either confirming the tax demand or dropping the same. Section 74A. Provide the standard timeline. नहीं, एक्ट में speaking order is not limited to the GST. It is a general term in which multiple times Supreme Court has given the verdict in other law also, that speaking order means a normal term, that your order should speak. What should speak? What is the penal action? Why it is being raised? Under which section, which provision, which rules you are leaving the sin? Whether you have considered the reply given by the recipient taxpayer. Likewise, it is not given in the law. Self-explanatory, Ayush. Okay. Section 74A provide standardized timeline and procedure for both type of the cases. Now, thereby bringing efficiency in handling the cases and promoting better understanding. So-cause notice can be issued within 24 months, within 42 months, 3.5 hours, 3.5 years. Now try to understand. Earlier, if it is a non-fraud case, then the revenue has the lesser time, 2 year 9 month, I can say, because 3 year mein order issue karna tha, and at least 3 months before they have to give the so-cause notice. So what is the last date to issue the so-cause notice? Under section 73, the last date to issue the so-cause notice is 2 year 9 month, and now it is 3.5 years. From the furnish, see this point, you please, whatever you are doing, whenever you are doing the revision, make sure what is being written, especially in terms of annual return. Is it due date of furnishing the annual return, or is it actual furnishing of return? Can you please tell me any provision in the GST which talks about actual filing of GST R9, GST annual return? जहां पर डेट कोई एक कट ऑफ डेट की काउंटिंग होती है फ्रॉम द actual filing of annual return instead of the due date. Can you tell me any provision? Just allow me. Any provision in the GST law which talks about actual date of filing, actual date of filing of GSTR 9. We have discussed multiple times. We have spent 5 classes on that chapter, and it is favorite chapter, important chapter as well as your favorite chapter. What is the last date to claim the ITC? What is the last date to claim the ITC? 30th November following the end of the financial year, or furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier. Furnishing of annual return, there they have not talked about the due date. So you will find the provision different. So accordingly, I would say कि whatever you have that pattern, make sure कि वो ड्यू डेट से काउंट कर रहा है या एक्चुअल फाइलिंग से काउंट कर रहा है, ये आप ध्यान रखिएगा. And in case of the refund, see, there are the 5 matter. What are the 5 matter? Tax not paid, first. Tax short paid, second. Erroneously refunded, third. Fourth, ITC wrongly availed, fourth. And or utilized, 5. In which the refund is not linked to the year for which it pertains. Let's say the refund is of 1920, but I have claimed the refund in 21-22. Then the whatever the time limit is there, the time limit would be counted from the refund taken from the date of the refund, not from the year for which it pertains. ITC के लिए जिस साल से पर्टेन करता है उससे बिलोंग करेगा. टैक्स के लिए जिस साल से बिलोंग करता है उससे काउंटिंग स्टार्ट होगी. बट इन केस ऑफ द रिफंड, टू विच ईयर इट पर्टेन, इट डज नॉट मैटर. It will matter the date when the refund has been taken. The order must be passed within 1 year. Now see, the time limit to issue the so-called notice is 3.5 years. And the time limit to order is 1 year from the SCN or from the erroneous refund. Then the incidence of the short payment of tax or erroneous refund or wrong availment or utilization of ITC because of inverted, see, the incidence of the short payment, non-payment of tax or erroneous refund or wrong availment or utilization of ITC may be because of inadvertent bona fide mistake, that is by reason other than fraud, correct, willful misstatement or suppression, other than fraud, other than willful statement, other than suppression of the fact. So hereinafter called as non-fraud cases. Or it may be the fraud cases also, deliberate attempt to evade the taxes. Okay. What is the 74? Let's read. Issuance of the so-called notice. SCN is issued in any of the following cases. So we have discussed tax not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded, ITC wrongly availed, or ITC wrongly utilized. SCN require the person chargeable with tax to show cause as to why he should not pay the amount specified in the SCN, along with interest under section 50 and penalty What is the difference between wrong availment? Acha, difference. Availment means there was an ITC appearing in the GSTR 2B. I have added in the GSTR 3B. In any table, let's talk about 4A5, GSTR 3B. And that's it. I have filed my return. It is availment only. In the next month, there was a tax liability of 10 lakh rupees. I have used 8 lakh rupees to discharge the tax liability. It means I have utilized 8 lakh rupees toward the, I have utilized this wrong ITC. So availment means you are taking only but not using for your liability payment. Utilize means when you are using against the liability, you are discharging the liability from that wrong ITC. Fine. Is that clear? SCN that we have discussed, and penalty leviable under the provision of the GST law. The SCN would clearly state amount of tax, interest, penalty that the person is liable to pay. Correct? Needless to say, the notice should clearly state the ground based on which such demand is raised, so that the person against whom the notice is served is made aware of the basis of the demand. मतलब उसको ये मालूम होना चाहिए whomsoever is कि that why this demand has been raised. Suppose they have raised the demand of 8 lakh rupees against the taxpayer, then they are saying कि why they have raised the demand. They will say, like in this example, they will say that because you have availed the ITC which is blocked in 17.5. SCN to be issued for both fraud cases and non-fraud cases. Exception. No SCN if the disputed amount is less than 1,000 rupees. That's it. Pre-SCN intimation. Now divide in 3 stages. One stage before issuance of the so-called notice. Second is after issuance of the so-called notice. Third is after issuance of the order. There are the 3 categories. Why these 3 categories important? Let's move further. The proper officer before service of so-called notice communicate the details of any tax, interest, penalty as ascertained by him in the prescribed form to the person chargeable with the tax, interest, and the penalty. It is important to note that issuance of the pre-SCN is not mandatory. Where such person has made the partial payment of the amount communicated to him and desire to file any submission against the proposed liability, he may make such submission, and thereafter the proper officer may issue an intimation accepting the payment or the submission or both as the case may be made by him. मतलब क्या हुआ? See, there is a demand of 8 lakh rupees. So officer may, please note, earlier the word was shall. And after that, they've replaced the word with may. What is the difference between shall and may? Shall means mandatory or may means optional. Where they have replaced? They have replaced with the issuance of the pre-so-cause notice, intimation. So there is a form DRC 01 capital A, which can be issued by the officer before so-cause notice. Why they are issuing? Because if I go about section 74, then there was a lesser penalty being imposed in the 74. Correct. The statement in lieu of the so-cause notice for the subsequent period. So accepting the payment. So they will raise the intimation. They will give the intimation. Why? So that if taxpayer is ready to pay, then the lesser penalty would be imposed. Like earlier, there was a 3 slab, 15% before SCN. Whatever the tax is demanded under section 74, then the penalty would be 15% if it is paid before the so cause notice. After SCN, 25. After order, 50. Yeah, after the expiry of the 30 days from the SCN, it will be the 50%. तो अब पेनल्टी का कंपोनेंट, पेनल्टी का परसेंटेज चेंज हो गया. दैट इज द रीजन दे वर रिक्वायर्ड टू इश्यू द सो कॉज नोटिस. बिफोर सो कॉज नोटिस मतलब प्री एससीएन स्टेटमेंट इन ल्यू ऑफ द एससीएन फॉर द सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड. अब उन्हें एससीएन इश्यू करने की रिक्वायरमेंट कब नहीं है? इफ मान लो देव इश्यूड द notices, so cause notice for year 1 and year 2, the demand is exactly on the same ground, where the SCN has been issued for any period. The officer may serve the statement instead of SCN for the subsequent period. Obviously, the statement given will be tax not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded, wrongly availed, or utilized. A statement will be given only when the period is different. But if the matter is different, grounds is different, then they have to mandatorily issue the so cause notice. Service of the statement for subsequent periods shall be deemed to be the service of the so cause notice. This is subject to the condition that the ground relied upon are the same. That is the important point for the statement. The provision ensured that department's time is saved for avoiding the repetitive retyping of the demand notice. Time limit for so cause notice. SCN must be issued within 42 months, that is 3.5 years, from the due date of furnishing the annual return or from the date of the erroneous refund. What is the penalty amount? If you read section 74 capital A, subsection 5, it talks about fraud cases or non-fraud cases. Penalty is the tax due, 100% tax amount. And non-fraud cases 10% of the tax due or 10,000. अगर फ्रॉड है तो कितनी पेनल्टी? 100%. नॉन फ्रॉड है तो 10% और 10,000, विच एवर इज लोअर की हायर. 10,000 each under CGST, 10,000 under IGST, if SGST, and if it is I, then total 20. Now, the person chargeable with the tax may give the representation to the proper officer, and the proper officer shall, after considering the representation, determine the amount of the tax, interest, and penalty due from such person and issue an order. Time limit for order is 12 months from the date of the so cause notice. However, if the officer is unable to issue the order within this time, now this provision is important, which I feel, because it was not there in the 73-74, and that is the reason they bring in the 74 capital A. The commissioner or any officer authorized by the commissioner who is the senior in the rank to the officer but not below the rank of the joint commissioner may extend this period. मतलब ये period भी extend किया जा सकता है. कितना टाइम? For a maximum of 6 months, provided the reason for the delay are recorded in writing before the expiry of the original 12-month period. It means internally, matlab, if they are not issuing the order within 12 months, that is also okay. It means they can issue the order within 1.5 years. We try to understand, are both not matched? Does it not mean that 73 is also become 74? Now, in both the cases, the time limit is same. What is the main point? Main point is that कि अब 73 और 74 में कोई differentiation रहा ही नहीं. They have made same thing. Is that clear? Payment of tax and interest and penalty before SCN. The law provides an opportunity to the person chargeable with the tax to pay before issuance of the so-called notice. In that case, in non-fraud case, penalty would be completely waived off, and in the fraud case, it will be reduced to 15%. Correct. Non-fraud case. In case of the non-fraud, the person chargeable with the tax along with interest payable under Section 50 before the SCN or the statement on the basis of his own ascertainment or as prescribed by the officer, and inform the proper officer in DRC 03. Once, what is the DRC 03? Have you used what is the DRC 03? कभी आपने यूज किया DRC 03? Just asking. No problem. अच्छा, संजय बोल रहे हैं हाँ मैंने यूज किया. No problem. We'll talk about that. See, अभी मैं पोर्टल पर भी लॉगिन करके आपको एक्सप्लेन कर ट्राई करूंगा. आई विल यूज दैट सम पार्ट ऑफ द जीएसटी पोर्टल आल्सो वेयर द नोटिसेस इज बीइंग इशूड, how to make the payment of the DRC 03. These points we will talk about practically for some minutes, some time, by which you will have the practical exposure as well. An acknowledgement shall be made available to the person through the common portal electronically. Officer on receipt of the information shall not serve any so-cause notice or statement. हाँ, अगर टैक्स पेयर ने पेमेंट कर दिया है पूरा, in that case he will not issue the so-cause notice, as the case may be in respect to the tax so paid or any penalty payable under the provision of the GST law. अगर फ्रॉड केस है तो क्या हुआ? In case of the fraud case, the person chargeable with the tax may pay along with interest under Section 50 and penalty equal to 15% before the issuance of the so-cause notice and statement. मतलब अगर नॉन फ्रॉड केस है तो पेनल्टी कितनी लगेगी? नो पेनल्टी. अगर फ्रॉड केस है तो पेनल्टी कितनी लगेगी? मिनिमम 15% will always be there. Again, the rest part is same. Inform the proper officer in writing and pay in writing of the payment in prescribed form DRC 03, and acknowledgement shall be made available to the person through the common portal electronically. The proper officer on receipt of the information shall not serve any SCN in respect of the tax so paid and penalty payable under the provision of the GST law, where amount paid falls short of the amount actually payable. 1 लाख का डिमांड था, पेमेंट आपने 70,000 किया. Where the proper officer is the opinion that the amount is shortly paid, then he will proceed to issue the so-cause notice for the remaining amount, that is 30,000 in our example. Option of paying the tax and interest and penalty before SCN so as to avoid the issuance of the so-cause notice in both fraud and non-fraud cases. अब हम बात करें payment of tax and interest and penalty within 60 days from the issuance of the so-cause notice. In case of the non-fraud cases, the person chargeable with the tax may pay along with interest under Section 50 within 60 days from the issuance of the so-cause notice or statement. Earlier it was 30 days. Point number one. You see that even in the non-fraud case, if the taxpayer pay the amount along with interest even after SCN within 60 days, then also no penalty. मतलब क्या हुआ? नॉन फ्रॉड के केस में बिफोर SCN no penalty, after SCN within 60 days no penalty. And inform the proper officer in the prescribed form. What is the prescribed form? DRC 03. In such case, no penalty shall be payable, and all the proceeding in respect of that SCN shall be deemed to be concluded. The officer shall issue the intimation again in the prescribed form, concluding the proceeding in respect of the said SCN. अगर fraud case है तो कितना? 25% penalty. Let's read. In fraud cases, the person chargeable with the tax may pay the interest along with tax and along with interest and the penalty 25%. Penalty 25% would be of tax or would be of taxable value. जो 25% की पेनल्टी है वो टैक्स की होगी या टैक्सेबल वैल्यू की होगी? टैक्स ऑफ, ठीक है. Again within 60 days from the SCN or statement and inform the officer. In such case, all the proceeding in respect of the said SCN shall be deemed to be concluded. The officer shall issue an intimation in the prescribed form concluding the proceeding in respect of the said SCN. ठीक है. And payment of tax, interest and penalty within 60 days of the communication of order. In case of the fraud cases, the person chargeable with the tax may pay the tax along with interest and penalty कितना component 50%. What is the penalty component? 50%. Within 60 days from the communication of the order and all the proceeding in respect of sedition shall be deemed to be concluded. So, penalty in case of the non-fraud cases. What is the penalty component? Now, here within 30 days from the due date. In case of the non-fraud case, if amount of the self-assessed tax or amount collected as tax has not been paid within a period of 30 days from the due date of the payment of taxes, non-fraud case में क्या है? If the amount of the self-assessed tax या amount collected as tax has not been paid within a period of 30 days, the following penalty will be payable: 10% of the tax or 10,000, whichever is higher. The provision notwithstanding anything contained in clause 1, clause 2 of 74A8. क्या मतलब हुआ? Imposition of the penalty is mandatory with no option of waiver. मतलब इस केस में आपके लिए पेनल्टी इंपॉर्टेंट मतलब मैंडेटरी है, कोई वेवर नहीं है इस केस में. ठीक है. इन केस द नॉन पेमेंट ऑफ सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स एंड अमाउंट कलेक्टेड एज रिप्रेजेंटिंग द टैक्स. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? इन दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या है सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स में और अमाउंट कलेक्टेड एज टैक्स एज रिप्रेजेंटिंग द टैक्स? व्हाट इज दैट डिफरेंस? Say if I am making the exempt supply, on the exempt supply, whether as per the GST, is there any tax? अगर सप्लाई एग्जेम्प्ट है तो क्या कोई टैक्स लगेगा? आंसर इज नो, नो टैक्स. बट स्टिल आई एम चार्जिंग द टैक्स, still I am charging the tax. So actually the tax is not payable on that, but still I'm charging the tax. Say I am a composition dealer. Assume that I am a composition dealer. Composition dealer will issue which document? What is the name of the document which composition dealer will issue? Name of the document which composition dealer will issue? It is bill of supply. So when he will issue the bill of supply, can the tax be collected on the bill of supply? No, tax cannot be collected, but still he is charging the tax. So that will not be the self-assessed tax. That will be the amount which is collecting representing the tax. Correct. So this is the and what is the self-assessed tax? So whatever the tax, say for example, I'm making the supply which is chargeable to 5%. So whatever the tax I have collected, I have not paid to the government. That is self-assessed tax, but not paid to the government. The only opportunity for paying the same without incurring any penalty if it is paid with interest within 30 days from the due date of the payment. So whenever it is due and if the payment is made within 30 days, then no penalty. Option to pay such tax before SCN or within 30 days of SCN and avoid penalty consequence is not available. See, try to understand. In this case, the pre-SCN intimation or within 30 days, 60 days, whatever the case may be, that is not available. अगर आपने 30 दिन में पेमेंट नहीं किया तो penalty is leviable. Penalty under section 74 shall be payable where any amount of tax, either self-assessed tax or representing as tax, has not been paid within a period of 30 days. Now, for the purpose of 74A, the expression all proceeding and respect of said notice shall not include proceeding under section 132. क्या है section 132? 132 related to the prosecution, means जहां पर जेल होती है, जहां पर टैक्स पेयर को जेल हो सकती है. what are the cases that we will discuss, but in that cases 132, see, एक सेकेंड, हाँ, ये वाला वर्ड, all proceeding in respect of the said SCN shall be deemed to be concluded. all proceeding का मतलब क्या? all proceeding का मतलब all, but उसमें 132 इंक्लूड नहीं होगा. what is 132? 132 talk about power to arrest. There is a provision of section 69 and 132. when we both linked together, then we'll come to know कि जो अरेस्ट है वो अरेस्ट कब हो सकती है, जहां पे 5 करोड़ से ज्यादा है, 2 करोड़ से ज्यादा है, एंड सर्टेन स्पेसिफाइड ऑफेंसेज. तो अगर 74 में कोई डिमांड है, टैक्स इंटरेस्ट पेनल्टी पे कर दिया, दैट इज ओके, नो प्रॉब्लम. ऑल प्रोसीडिंग विल डीम टू बी कंक्लूडेड, बट इट विल नॉट डीम टू बी कंक्लूडेड सेक्शन 132 का ऑफेंस. Thus, the person can be prosecuted even if no further demand can be raised for the tax, interest and penalty. अभी देखो, सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स की मैं बात करता हूं. when you read further, there was an explanation one, they have inserted new 75 subsection 12. They talks about self assessed tax means two important points. They have talked about one point, they have talked about what is the self assessed tax. They have not defined the self assessed tax, but they are saying if the GSTR1 is higher and GSTR3B is lower, is it possible कि 1 में मैंने टैक्स लाइबिलिटी 1 लाख रुपए बताती, बट मैं 3B फाइल कर रहा हूं विद 20,000? विल इट बी पॉसिबल? Any idea about the GSTR 3B? As of now, answer is yes. Sanjay, abhi hai. Editable hai. GSTR 3B is editable. So if I have reported the liability as rupees 1 lakh in the GSTR 1, but I have discharged only 20,000 in the GSTR 3B, then remaining 80 would be considered as self-assessed. Second point which I talked about. So there is a time limit to issue the notice. There is a time limit to issue the notice for tax not collected, short collected, etc., whatever. But if it is a self-assessed tax liability, there is no requirement to show cause notice. It can be directly recovered. Earlier, I'm talking about what is the current provision that we will read in some time, but that is the two major difference in the self-assessed. Correct? Got it? Huh? Now, section 132. Thus, a person can be prosecuted under the GST law even if no further demand can be raised for the tax, interest, penalty. Prosecution is a criminal code, is independent, and it can be in addition to the penalty imposed under the GST law. That is clear. Where the notice under the same proceeding is issued to the main person liable to pay the tax and some other person, and such proceeding against the main person have been concluded in 74A, the proceeding against all the person are deemed to be concluded section 122, 125. क्या मतलब है इसका? Try to understand. It is a very interesting line. See, there was a Mr. A who has been in the fraud or non-fraud cases, whatever. He's issued the invoice to Mr. B. And based on that, Mr. B has done something on which penalty is being leviable on 122, or it is general penalty is being levied on the Mr. B. Now, if the demand, if on the same transaction, if the demand under section 74 has been raised to the Mr. A, and on the same transaction, there is a demand of section 125, that is general penalty on Mr. B, same transaction, because it is the sale and it is the purchase of another party. Now, मिस अगर मेन पर्सन मिस्टर ए ने वो पेनल्टी इंटरेस्ट टैक्स जो पे कर दिया, जो भी उसका स्लैब था, और 74 ए कंक्लूड हो गया, तो इस पर्सन के ऊपर जो 125 की पेनल्टी वो भी डीम टू बी कंक्लूडेड है. Sometime if a notice is issued to the company, another example, तो कंपनी के अगेंस्ट में इश्यू किया, सेम डायरेक्टर के अगेंस्ट में इश्यू कर दिया, एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर के अगेंस्ट में इश्यू कर दिया, ठीक है. देन कंपनी इज द मेन नोटिस, बाकी को नोटिस हो गया. अगर कंपनी ने टैक्स इंटरेस्ट पेनल्टी पे कर दिया, देन इट मींस द को नोटिस वुड आल्सो बी डीम्ड टू बी कंक्लूडेड, मतलब उनके अगेंस्ट में एक्शन खत्म हो जाएगा. सप्रेशन का मतलब क्या, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट है. द एक्सप्रेशन सप्रेशन शैल मींस नॉन डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ द फैक्ट और इंफॉर्मेशन which a taxable person is required to declare in the return, statement or report or any other document furnished under this act or the rules made thereunder, or failure to furnish any information on being asked for in writing by the proper officer. क्या मतलब हुआ, ऑफिसर ने बोला कि आप मुझे बैलेंस शीट दो, आप मुझे प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट दो, बट आप बैलेंस शीट और प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट नहीं दे रहे, या आपको जीएसटीआर रिटर्न में, जीएसटीआर 1 में, 3B में कुछ रिपोर्ट करना मैंडेटरी था, एंड यू हैव नॉट रिपोर्टेड दैट इंफॉर्मेशन, इट मींस इट इज नथिंग बट द सप्रेशन ऑफ द फैक्ट. क्यों जरूरी सप्रेशन, अगेन ऊपर आइए. If you talk about that, they are telling fraud, willful misstatement, or suppression of the fact. What is the meaning of the suppression? Suppression का मतलब बता दिया. इन्होंने क्या बताया, फ्रॉड का मतलब नहीं बताया, willful statement का मतलब नहीं बताया, but suppression का मतलब बता दिया. What is the meaning of suppression? It means something is mandatory which to report, but I have not reported the same. The expression suppression shall mean non-declaration of the fact or the information which a taxable person is required to declare in the written statement, report, or any other document furnished under this act or the rules made thereunder, or failure to furnish any information on being asked for in writing by the proper officer. Thus, definition of the suppression is very clear, that only if the information that was required to be disclosed under the GST law, example, written statement, report, etc., is not disclosed, that would amount to the suppression. It is the duty of a taxable person to disclose each material to the department which is being asked for. ठीक है. So fine, ये summary हम बाद में कर लेंगे. Let's take a break of 10 minutes and then we'll resume again at 8:05 and we'll discuss from this page. Sir, अशोक सर, ये 5 मिनट का ब्रेक स्टार्ट, 10 मिनट का ब्रेक स्टार्ट कर दीजिए. 74 capital A, let's summarize. The power to serve the so-cause notice in case there is tax not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded, or ITC wrongly availed or utilized. कब SCN इश्यू नहीं किया जाएगा? अगर डिमांड अप टू 1000 लेस देन 1000 रुपीज की है. What is the time limit to issue the so-cause notice? 42 month. 42 month would be counted from the due date of furnishing the annual return for which the tax not paid, short paid, or ITC wrongly availed and utilized, or from the date on which the refund has been taken. ठीक है. Then issuance of the statement for subsequent period. PO may serve. What is the meaning of PO? Proper officer may serve the statement containing the details of the tax not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded for subsequent period other than covered in the original notice. Deemed so-cause notice. That statement will be deemed to be the so-cause notice. अगर फैक्ट सेम है, ग्राउंड सेम है, पेनल्टी कितना है? अगर पेनल्टी नॉन फ्रॉड केस है तो 10% और 10,000 विच एवर इज हायर, एंड फ्रॉड है तो 100% ऑफ द टैक्स. अगेन अगर टैक्स एंड इंटरेस्ट इज पेड प्री SCN, नो पेनल्टी, यहां पे 15%. पोस्ट SCN बट विद इन 60 days, नो पेनल्टी, अगेन 25%. पोस्ट ऑर्डर, then 50% within 60 days. Issuance of the order, and the order will be issued. Then what is the time limit of the order? 12 months, normally from the date of the SCN, or extended up to 6 months. Penalty in case of the self-assessed tax or amount collected as tax. If in non-fraud cases, the self-assessed tax or amount collected as tax is not paid within 30 days from the due date, then penalty shall be 10% of the tax or 10,000, whichever is higher. Now, that is all about 74 capital A. General provision relating to the determination of the tax. Now, they are they are talking about the general provision. So, if the demand is being stayed, or where the service of the notice or issuance of the order is stay by the court or tribunal, then the period of the stay will be excluded in counting the limit of 4.5 years, 3.5 years, 6 months, etc. जितने टाइम पीरियड के लिए वो नोटिस इश्यू नहीं कर सकते या ऑर्डर इश्यू नहीं कर सकते, दैट स्टे विल बी एक्सक्लूडेड. In case of the charges of the fraud, any willful misstatement, suppression of the fact are not established for a notice issued in a fraud case, penalty will be prescribed for non-fraud cases is payable. Where any appellate authority or tribunal or the court conclude that penalty prescribed for fraud cases is not sustainable for the reason that the charge of the fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of the fact has not been established, then the notice जिसके अगेंस्ट में इश्यू किया, द पेनल्टी प्रिस्क्राइब्ड फॉर नॉन फ्रॉड केसेस शैल बी पेबल. अब यहां पर बहुत बड़ा चेंज है. पहले क्या होता था? पहले कहते थे कि अगर फ्रॉड एस्टैब्लिश नहीं हो पाता तो देन इट विल बी डीम्ड दैट इट इज द 73 केस. तो व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस? द डिफरेंस इज द पेनल्टी. द फर्स्ट डिफरेंस इज द पेनल्टी, एंड सेकंड डिफरेंस इज द एंटायर डिमांड विल बी क्वेश्ड अगर ये 73 का टाइम लिमिट था 2 year 9 month और 74 का टाइम लिमिट था 4 year 6 month फॉर सेंडिंग द नोटिस. लेट्स से नोटिस इज बीइंग सेंड ऑन 3 year, आफ्टर 3 year, ठीक है. एंड अल्टीमेटली अगर 74 प्रूव नहीं हो जाता तो किसमें कन्वर्ट हो जाता था? 73 में. और 73 में कन्वर्ट होने का एक तो पेनल्टी कम होगा, दैट इज ओके, बट अगेन इफ द टाइम लिमिट टू इश्यू द सो कॉज नोटिस हैज एक्सपायर्ड फॉर 73, तो अब ये 73 में भी सस्टेनेबल नहीं है. मीनिंग देयर बाई एंटायर डिमांड विल बिकम जीरो. जस्ट बिकॉज कि 74 से 73 में कन्वर्ट हो गया, तो क्या हुआ, 73 की जो टाइम लिमिट है उस टाइम लिमिट में नोटिस इश्यू हुआ है या नहीं हुआ, दैट इज द इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स। बट अब क्या है, टाइम तो सेम हो गया, टाइम में तो कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है, क्योंकि 74 ए ने दोनों को कवर करके एक ही टाइम प्रिस्क्राइब कर दिया। ठीक है, एडजुडिकेशन ऑर्डर इन pursuance of the appellate authority, tribunal court can be issued within 2 years. When any order is required to be issued as per the direction of the authority, tribunal, or the court, then it shall be issued within 2 years from the date of the communication. It shall be issued, मतलब let's say कि 1 year के बाद में SC ने इश्यू कर दिया, देन, और अगर मान लो कोई कोर्ट या ट्रिब्यूनल ने कह दिया ऑर्डर इश्यू करना है, तो 2 साल के अंदर अंदर इसका ऑर्डर इश्यू करना है। यहाँ पे एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग क्लैरिफिकेशन था, 73 74 के केस में वो टाइम परमिट करेगा लास्ट में, तो वी विल रीड, अदरवाइज वी विल इग्नोर, क्योंकि अब आपका 74 ए एप्लीकेबल है। अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ द बीइंग हर्ड, जब भी एडवर्स डिसीजन लिया जाता है किसी भी टैक्स पेयर के अगेंस्ट में, देन इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू गिव द अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ हियरिंग, either when the request is received, ठीक है, और when the adverse decision is contemplated। जब आप रिप्लाई फाइल करते हैं, when you give the reply, then there is a check box कि whether you need the personal hearing or not, एक check box आता है। Sometime what happened, why I am telling you that there was a decision, there was some decision on this personal hearing point, then they talked about why, एक था yes, एक था no, and they've ticked on the no, assume that, मतलब इग्नोर कर दिया या ध्यान नहीं दिया, and then he has not granted the opportunity of the being heard and has issued the advance, मतलब against order, contemplating the demand. In that case, even if personal hearing is no, given by the recipient, given by the taxpayer himself, but it is mandatory to give the personal hearing because it says कि either request is received from the taxpayer or if any adverse decision is taken, तो मैं अगर डिमांड निकाल रहे हैं ऑफिसर उस पर्सन के अगेंस्ट में, देन इट इज एन एडवर्स ऑर्डर, राइट, सो इट इज मैंडेटरी टू गिव द पर्सनल हियरिंग। नाउ एडजॉर्नमेंट इज पॉसिबल मैक्सिमम 3 टाइम्स, मतलब लॉ मुझे परमिट करता है कि अगर बिकॉज ऑफ एनी रीजन आई एम नॉट एबल टू अटेंड, तो आई कैन पोस्टपोन द हियरिंग फॉर 3 टाइम्स। The proper officer, if sufficient cause is being shown, then grant the time to the said person and adjourn the hearing to be recorded in writing. However, such adjournment shall be granted for a maximum period of 3 times. 3 times. 3 बार से ज्यादा एडजॉर्नमेंट नहीं कर सकता, लेकिन अगर है, आपको लगता है जेन्युइन रीजन है, देन यू शुड आस्क फॉर द एडजॉर्नमेंट। Adjudication order should be the speaking order. Shall set out all the relevant fact and the basis of his direction. Tax, interest and penalty not to exceed the amount specified in the notice. ये बड़ा important है। मतलब see, section 70, these provisions are important because when you see in the practical life, even though everything is okay, but suppose SCN has not been given or not included the fact and which has been additionally included in the order, simply give the 75 subsection 7, your order will be nullified, deemed to be void. The tax, interest and penalty demanded in the order shall not exceed the amount specified in the notice, and no demand shall be confirmed on the ground other than the ground specified in the notice. ग्राउंड भी चेंज नहीं कर सकते नोटिस एंड ऑर्डर के अंदर, आप ग्राउंड भी चेंज नहीं कर सकते। आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द डिमांड व्हिच हैज बीन रेज्ड बाय द ऑफिसर अगेंस्ट द टैक्स पेयर। In case of the modification of tax by appellate authority, tribunal, court, penalties and interest to be modified accordingly. Where the appellate authority or appellate tribunal or the court modify the amount of the tax determined by the proper officer, amount of interest and penalty shall stand modified accordingly, taking into account the amount of the tax so modified. अगर कोई टैक्स का अमाउंट मॉडिफाई होता है तो 75 सबसेक्शन 8 कहता है ऑटोमेटिकली उसकी इंटरेस्ट और उसका पेनल्टी का कंपोनेंट चेंज हो जाएगा इवन दो इट इज नॉट स्पेसिफाइड. मतलब अगर आपका ऑर्डर है 1 लाख प्लस इंटरेस्ट प्लस पेनल्टी है, मान लो 1 लाख का बेसिक अमाउंट चेंज होके 80,000 हो गया, तो कॉरस्पॉन्डिंगली इंटरेस्ट एंड कॉरस्पॉन्डिंगली पेनल्टी विल बी चेंज्ड. हाँ, ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. समटाइम they are giving the order only for the tax component. They are not giving the order for interest. They are not mentioning the penalty. तो अब इनका कहना है पेनल्टी मैंडेटरी है. इंटरेस्ट अगर स्पेसिफाई नहीं भी है then also interest is payable. Interest on the tax short paid, not paid, or etc. etc. shall be payable whether or not specified in the order. Means you cannot do the argument that because interest is not mentioned in the order, I will not pay the interest. The GST law ensures the timely disposal of the case by providing that if the adjudication is not issued within the stipulated time of 1 year, the adjudication proceeding shall be deemed to be concluded. Adjudication order to be passed mandatorily within stipulated time. The GST law ensures the timely disposal of the case by providing that if the adjudication order is not issued within the stipulated time of 1 year, the adjudication proceeding shall be deemed to be concluded. In case of the appeal filed by the department against the decision of the appellate authority, appellate tribunal, high court, between the date of the decision of the higher authority and that of the lower authority to be excluded. क्या मतलब है? Let's see. An issue on which appellate authority or tribunal or high court has given its decision which is prejudicial to the interest of the revenue in some other proceeding, and an appeal to the appellate tribunal or डिमांड किसकी थी? अथॉरिटी की. अपील किसको किया? ट्रिब्यूनल को किया. डिमांड किसकी थी? ट्रिब्यूनल की. अपील किसको की? हाई कोर्ट को. डिमांड हाई कोर्ट की थी और अपील किसको की? सुप्रीम कोर्ट. एक एक लेवल हायर है. सी वी ऑल नो दैट इन द अपील द फर्स्ट इज अपीलेट अथॉरिटी, देन ट्रिब्यूनल, देन हाई कोर्ट, देन सुप्रीम कोर्ट. ये 4 लेवल है, राइट? तो कोई भी इश्यू जिसके अगेंस्ट में अपीलेट अथॉरिटी, ट्रिब्यूनल, कोर्ट जो कि prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. Revenue का मतलब क्या होता है? What is the meaning of revenue? Interest of revenue means what is the meaning of revenue? Government. Absolutely correct. Government. An issue on which the appellate authority, tribunal or the court has given its decision which is prejudicial to the revenue, मतलब government के against में in some other proceeding, and an appeal to the higher authority against such a decision is pending. ठीक है. So the period spent between the lower authority to the higher authority, date of the decision of the appellate authority, tribunal or high court, etc., then that of the decision will be excluded. क्यों exclude किया जाएगा? In computing the time limit for passing the adjudication order. जो 1 साल की बात हो रही है, करेक्ट? We are talking about the adjudication order has to be issued. Adjudication order has to be issued, has to be passed within the 1 year time limit. और ये 1 year की टाइम लिमिट की जब हम काउंटिंग करेंगे ना, तो इस ऑर्डर के बीच में जो टाइम है वो एक्सक्लूड कर देंगे, लोअर टू हायर, in computing the time limit for passing the adjudication order when the proceeding are initiated by way of the SCN in 73 74 पहले था और अब 74A ऐड कर दिया उन्होंने। ठीक है, हाँ, इसकी मैं बात कर रहा था 7512 की। अमाउंट ऑफ सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स और इंटरेस्ट remaining unpaid to be recovered under section 79। हाँ, मैं एक बार मैं देता हूं एग्जांपल, लेट मी सी। The order was issued on 26th December 2024. That notice, and they will to issue the order in the 26th December 2025. Let's say in between, on the similar matter, there was a appeal filed by the department for which the order has been passed after let's say 7 months. Then this 7 month will be excluded. तो अभी जो December 25 था, वो December 25 में 7 month और add कर दिया जाएगा, just because that adverse decision was passed against the department and for which the appeal has been filed and for which the decision is yet to become, and वो decision आता है let's say 7 month बाद में, तो automatically जो ये 1 year का time है ना, वो extend हो जाएगा 7 month से। This I have already talked. GSTR 1 means section 37 and GSTR 3B means section 39। ठीक है, सी, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ, नॉट विद स्टैंडिंग एनीथिंग कंटेंट, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि जो सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स है वो रिकवर किया जा सकता है इवन विदाउट फॉलोइंग द प्रोसेस गिवन बाय 73 74 और 74A। इट मींस टू रिकवर द सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स देयर इज नो टाइम लिमिट। To recover the self-assessed tax, there is no time limit. Means, let's read. Notwithstanding anything contained in 73, 74, where or 74A, where any amount of the self-assessed tax in accordance with the return furnished under section 39 remain unpaid, either wholly or partially, or any amount of the interest payable or on such tax has been unpaid, the same shall be directly recovered under the provision of section 79. Directly, it means there is no requirement to issue the notice, there is no requirement to issue the order, and it can be directly recovered. What is the mode that we will discuss shortly, कि जैसे बैंक अकाउंट को अटैच कर सकते हैं, प्रॉपर्टी को अटैच कर सकते हैं, देयर आर वेरियस मोड। ठीक है, कलेक्टर का ऑर्डर इश्यू कर सकते हैं, कलेक्टर से रिक्वेस्ट करके ऑर्डर इश्यू करवा सकते हैं, समथिंग लाइक दैट। And what is the meaning of this expression? Self-assessed tax shall include the tax payable as per GSTR 1 but not paid in the GSTR 3B. See, problem ये आती थी, self-assessed tax in accordance with 739 remain unpaid. ये तो स्टेटमेंट हो ही नहीं सकता ना। Why? Because अगर आपने कोई टैक्स ऐड कर दिया 39 में 3B में, तो 3B तो तब तक फाइल नहीं होगा, द 3B वुड नॉट बी फाइल्ड, द GSTR 3B वुड नॉट बी फाइल्ड जब तक वो टैक्स जितना 39 में दिखाया उतना पे ना कर दे। We all know that GSTR 3B cannot be furnished even without paying the taxes. No, 39 में जितना टैक्स दिखा दिया वो तो पे करना ही पड़ेगा। तो फिर इस बात का मतलब क्या, where any amount of the self-assessed tax under section 39 remain unpaid, then they have clarified by adding the explanation that self-assessed tax shall include the liability reported in R1 not reported in 3B। मतलब शॉर्ट पेड है, ये जो शॉर्ट पेड है ना, ये 73 74 वाले पार्ट से कवर नहीं होगा, उससे एक्सक्लूड हो जाएगा। क्यों? क्योंकि इसके लिए तो कोई टाइम लिमिट ही नहीं है। द स्कोप ऑफ द टर्म सेल्फ असेस इज वाइड एनफ एंड जीएसटी अनदर, मैं ये एक्सप्लेन कर चुका हूं, आई थिंक दिस इज सफिशिएंट। हाँ, however, the difference or mismatch between the R1 and 3B may arise due to the genuine reason. For example, a typographical error wrongly reported in GSTR1 or 3B, which may be rectified in GSTR1 or GSTR3B. ऐसा हो सकता है ना, there is a possibility that I have to report 1 lakh rupees, but wrongly I have reported one more zero, GSTR1. तो जब मैं GSTR3B फाइल करूंगा तो obviously I will pay the correct tax. So does it mean that it will be the self-assessed tax which need to be recovered? Answer is okay, but at least there would be some opportunity given to the taxpayer कि भाई वो genuine mistake थी या क्या था, क्या problem था, what is the problem? Where the supply could not be declared in GSTR1 of earlier tax period, though the tax on the same was correctly reported the 3B. देखो ये भी बड़ा important कारण हो सकता है. See, return means section 39, GSTR 3B. तो क्या होता है, एक इनवॉइस मेरे से रिपोर्ट होना मिस हो गया. I have to report the transaction was pertaining to December, but when I am filing the GSTR1 for December, I missed. What is the alternate solution? Assuming that the GSTR1A was not there. Assuming the GSTR1A was not there. अगर मैंने GSTR1 फाइल कर दिया, ठीक है, देन और अगर कोई इनवॉइस छूट गया मेरे से, आई हैव लेफ्ट वन इनवॉइस, तो आई हैव टू पे द टैक्स, देन आई कैन ऐड इन द 3B. तो जो 3B में ऑटो पॉपुलेट होता है ना, मैं उसको इंक्रीज कर देता था मैनुअली, बिकॉज 3B इज एडिटेबल एज ऑफ नाउ. Once I will do the manual increase, then what happen? Whatever that reporting will be done in the next month. अब मैंने टैक्स ज्यादा पे कर दिया, अब मैं GSTR नेक्स्ट मंथ का सोचो, मैं अमेंड करूंगा, वो जो इनवॉइस छूट गया था वो मैं ऐड करूंगा, बट विल आई पे द same amount in GSTR3B? Answer is no. Whatever I have reported in R1, I will not pay because I have already paid in GSTR3B. तो मैं वो क्या टैक्स पे करूंगा, कम टैक्स पे करूंगा. तो ये डिफरेंस क्या है? अगेन इट इज ए सम सॉर्ट ऑफ द रेक्टिफिकेशन, वे ऑफ रेक्टिफिकेशन. है ना? तो क्या हुआ कि ये केस भी हो सकता है, तो देयर कुड बी. तो मतलब इन्होंने एक मतलब उस ये वाला इंस्ट्रक्शन नंबर भी दिया हुआ है. ये एक इंस्ट्रक्शन इशू किया था आफ्टर दिस एक्सप्लेनेशन. वंस दिस एक्सप्लेनेशन वाज इंसर्टेड, व्हिच एक्सप्लेनेशन? दिस एक्सप्लेनेशन. इट बिकम वेरी सीरियस इशू. क्यों सीरियस इशू? क्योंकि अगर आप सिर्फ दिसंबर का मैंने ये मिस हो गया था, जनवरी का अगर GSTR1 और GSTR3B देखोगे आप, इफ यू सी द R1 and 3B फॉर द मंथ ऑफ जनवरी, you will find the difference. Will that difference be collected as self-assessed tax? Prima facie answer would be yes. But again, उन्होंने कहा first ask from the taxpayer that why there is a difference. ठीक है ना? When the liability could not be declared in the so instruction 2A provide that in case of the mismatch, the officer may first send a communication to pay the tax short paid, not paid, or to explain the reason for a reasonable time period in the communication. अब क्या हुआ? अब उन्होंने एक नया मैकेनिज्म स्टार्ट कर दिया. एनीबडी हु हैज द आइडिया ऑफ द DRC01B and DRC01C? एनीवन हैज एनी आइडिया अबाउट DRC1B and 1C? नो प्रॉब्लम आयुष. अब क्या हुआ? सेम कॉन्सेप्ट सेम है. अब R1 और 3B में डिफरेंस है. अगर ये डिफरेंस is more than 25 lakh and 20%, एक certain threshold उन्होंने रखी है 25 lakh and 20%. तो system itself will send the communication. See, officer will send. यहां पे क्या है? ये मैनुअल कम्युनिकेशन की बात कर रहा है. They are talking about the manual communication. करेक्ट. अब इसको सिस्टम में ऑटोमेट कर दिया, बट हायर अमाउंट के साथ. जहां पे भी डिफरेंस R1 3B में 25 लाख एंड 20% से ज्यादा है, देन दे विल सेंड द कम्युनिकेशन एंड विच विल क्लैरिफाइड बाय द टैक्स पेयर विद इन 7 days. तो otherwise the recovery will be initiated by the officer, or when the said person either fail to pay to the fail to reply to the proper officer, or fail to make the payment, or fail to explain. तो तीनों में से अगर कोई कारण है तो फिर वो रिकवरी स्टार्ट हो जाएगी. Where any penalty is imposed, see, ये है कॉन्सेप्ट डबल जियोपार्डी का. What is the double jeopardy? डबल जियोपार्डी इज मीन्स ये एक कॉन्सेप्ट है एडजुडिकेशन प्रोसीडिंग में, सिर्फ जीएसटी तक का नहीं, सभी के केस में एप्लीकेबल है। मतलब एक ही पेनल्टी के लिए आप दो बार किसी को एक एक ही रॉन्ग एक्ट के लिए दो बार उसको पेनलाइज नहीं करोगे। सपोज किसी ने टैक्स शॉर्ट पे किया, तो ऐसा नहीं कि आपने 73, 74 या 74A की पेनल्टी लगा दी एंड पैरेलली आपने 122(1) की पेनल्टी भी लगा दी या 125 की पेनल्टी लगा दी, मैं एज्यूम करता हूं कोई भी पेनल्टी लगा दी। एक ही रॉन्गफुल एक्ट है, बट आपने पेनल्टी कितनी लगा दी, दो तरह की, एक 74A में, लेट से दूसरी 122 में। तो it means for same act, it should not be punished twice. That is what is written in 7530. When the penalty is imposed under section 73, 74 or 74A, no penalty for the same act or omission shall be imposed on the same person under any other provisions of this act. तो मतलब क्या है, नॉर्मली जब आप देखोगे, नॉर्मली the penalty would be initiated, normally the penalty would be initiated in these sections only. अब हम बात करते हैं टैक्स कलेक्ट कर लिया बट पे नहीं किया, सेक्शन 76। ये कॉन्सेप्ट हमने कहां रीड किया था, अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट। ये कॉन्सेप्ट हमने कहां डिस्कस किया था, अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट का? रिफंड में, रिफंड में हमने बात की थी ना, रिफंड में कि अनजस्टिफाइड अनरिच नहीं होना चाहिए। इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर के रिफंड में अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट के लिए कोई सर्टिफिकेट देना मैंडेटरी है? डू दिस concept of unjust enrichment be applicable in case of the refund of electronic cash ledger? ये मैं नहीं पढ़ाया था ना रिफंड आपको, मैं नहीं पढ़ाया था ना रिफंड आपको। आंसर इज नो, करेक्ट। Now, such situation may arise in case when the tax is collected on the supply on which tax is leviable, but such tax is not deposited with the government, or where the tax collected on the supply on which tax is not leviable at all, and thus tax collected not deposited with the government. ठीक है, तो amount representing the tax collected from any person to be paid to the central government, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in any order, direction, or authority, tribunal, court, in any other provision or the rules made thereunder or any other law for the timing in force, every person who has collected from any other person amount representing the tax and has not been paid the said amount to the government shall forthwith pay the amount irrespective of whether supply in respect of which amount was collected or taxable or not. This point is clear. I have given the example also below. Supply, composition dealer, exempted supply. मैंने आपको एग्जांपल भी बता दिया। तो वो अमाउंट जो मैंने टैक्स के नाम पर कलेक्ट किया ना, वो मुझे गवर्नमेंट को देना ही पड़ेगा, इवन दो सप्लाई इज नॉट टैक्सेबल। Where any amount is required to be paid to the government which has not been so paid, the officer may serve the person liable to pay such amount in notice, requiring him to show cause as to why the said amount should not be paid to the government and why the penalty equivalent to the amount specified in the notice should not be imposed under this act. Determination of the amount due. The officer shall, after considering the representation, if any, made by the person on whom SCN is served, determine the amount due and thereupon shall pay the amount. Interest payable. The person who has collected any amount as tax but not deposited the same with the government, in addition to paying the amount as determined by the proper officer, shall also be liable to pay the interest. Interest is payable at the rate of 50%, at the rate specified in the section 50. Can you tell me the rate of interest at the rate of 24% is applicable in which case? एक 18% है, एक 24% है. तो my question is 24% is applicable in which case? Answer is in no case. There is no case on which 24 is applicable. Earlier, there was 24% interest on the ITC, but that has also been retrospectively amended and on which the interest is 18%. ठीक है. Opportunity of the being heard. Opportunity shall be granted where a request is received in writing from the person to whom SCN was issued. So opportunity of being heard, natural justice. Time limit is within 1 year from the date of issue of the notice. Where the issuance of the order is stay by the court, tribunal, etc., then such stay will be excluded. Same provision 74A में था. Order must be speaking order. Normal point. Adjustment of the amount payable. Amount paid to the government under subsection 1, subsection 3 shall be adjusted against the tax payable, if any, by the person in relation to the supplies referred to in subsection 1, where any surplus is left after the adjournment. Under subsection 9, the amount of such surplus shall either be credited to the consumer welfare fund or refunded to the person who has borne the incidence of the tax. We all know what is the concept of consumer welfare fund. ठीक है, हमने रिफंड के चैप्टर में डिस्कस कर लिया था. तो अगर कोई सरप्लस बच जाता है आफ्टर एडजस्टमेंट, देन ईदर हैज टू बी रिफंडेड बैक और इट विल बी क्रेडिटेड टू द कंज्यूमर वेलफेयर फंड. ठीक है. The person who borne the incidence of the tax may apply for the refund in accordance with the provision of section 54. बट अगर वो रिफंड अप्लाई नहीं करता है और टाइम लिमिट क्रॉस हो जाती है तो फिर वो कंज्यूमर वेलफेयर फंड में चला जाएगा. व्हाट इज सेक्शन 77? एनीबडी हु नोज? हमने डिस्कस किया था. एक बार मुझे अनम्यूट करके आप बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट एक्सप्लेन कर सकें. एनीवन कैन अनम्यूट एंड एक्सप्लेन द बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट. कोई भी, आयुष या संजय, अनम्यूट करके मुझे बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं. व्हाट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सेक्शन 77? ये सुनो, जस्ट टेल मी, ये सुनो, मतलब अनम्यूट करना पॉसिबल है या नहीं है, या चैट करना चाहें तो चैट भी कर सकते हैं. नो. सो दिस point we have already discussed, right Sanjay? Right Sanjay, this point we have already discussed in the refund chapter. क्या हुआ कि अगर मैंने किसी ट्रांजेक्शन को इंटर स्टेट ट्रीट किया और बाद में वो निकला इंट्रा स्टेट, ये जो डिटरमिने इंटर और इंट्रा, इसका इंट्रा कैन बी determined by the officer or can be determined on suo motu basis, no problem in both the cases. So I have to pay the wrong tax and take the refund of, I have to pay the correct tax and take the refund of wrong tax. तो पहले मैंने इंटर माना and I have paid IGST. तो अब मुझे कौन सा टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा? पहले मैंने इंटर माना and I have paid IGST. Now it is subsequently held as intra. तो मुझे कौन सा पे करना पड़ेगा? C+S. And I will take the refund of IGST. I will take the refund of IGST. And vice versa, अगर मैंने इंट्रा ट्रीट किया तो कौन सा टैक्स पे किया मैंने? C+S. And which is subsequently held to be inter. तो कौन सा टैक्स पे करूंगा मैं? करेक्ट टैक्स कौन सा पे करूंगा? I. And I will take the refund of wrong taxes. Now इस केस में will the interest be leviable? Say suppose I have determined after 2 year, after 3 year, let's say after 3 year, मैंने interstate माना, IGST पे किया, let's say in 21. Assume that I have paid IGST on 21, and in the 25, I come to know that this transaction was intra. मैंने C+S correctly पे कर दिया. Do I need to pay the interest also for 4 years? Answer is no. ये 77 में साफ लिखा हुआ है, इट इज क्लियरली मेंशन्ड इन द 77 that no interest is payable in this case. Okay, so no interest is payable in this case. ये वाला बात हुआ. सेकेंड, ये 2 year का टाइम लिमिट वुड बी काउंटेड फ्रॉम द रॉन्ग टैक्स और फ्रॉम द करेक्ट टैक्स. मुझे 2 साल के अंदर रिफंड लेना है पुराना जो रॉन्ग टैक्स पे किया था, तो ये जो काउंटिंग होगी 2 साल की, will it be counted from wrong tax or will it be counted from correct tax? Absolutely correct. सर, अगर रॉन्ग टैक्स से काउंट करेंगे ना, तो ऐसी पॉसिबिलिटी भी है कि वो 2 साल का टाइम लिमिट एक्सपायर हो चुका. एंड दैट वाज द प्रॉब्लम इन द ट्रेड, एंड फॉर विच एज वी डिस्कस्ड इन द refund chapter, 2 year ka time limit would be counted from the multiple dates, and in this case the 2 year would be counted from the date when the correct tax is being paid and no interest. Just a quickly read कर लेते हैं. A registered person who has paid the CGST and SGST, or as the case may be CGST and UTGST, on a transaction considered by him to be an intra but which is subsequently held to be inter, shall be refunded the amount of the tax so paid subject to condition as may be prescribed. A registered person who has paid IGST on the transaction considered by him to be inter but which is subsequently held to be intra shall not be required to pay interest on the amount of the C&S, or as the case may be C and UTGST. Similar provisions are contained in section 19. ठीक है. अब प्रॉब्लम क्या थी? सब्सिक्वेंटली हेल्ड के केस में एक क्लैरिफिकेशन था कि सब्सिक्वेंटली हेल्ड कब, बाय द ऑफिसर या बाय द टैक्स पेयर. सब्सिक्वेंटली हेल्ड बाय द ऑफिसर या बाय द टैक्स पेयर, और बाय बोथ, एनीवन. Either taxpayer identify and do this adjustment, or officer identify and do this adjustment. It is clarified that term subsequently held cover both the cases where intrastate supply or interstate supply made by the taxpayer is either subsequently found by the taxpayer himself or subsequently found by the tax officer in any proceeding. Both are being covered. So in some of the cases it has been identified by the CBIC that the department is not giving the refund in cases when the taxpayer himself identified and pay the correct taxes and is asking for the refund of the wrong tax. Then they are saying subsequently held means it is only by the officer, not by the taxpayer, and for that purpose it has been clarified. अब है रिकवरी प्रोसीडिंग इन 78 एंड 79. क्या मतलब रिकवरी प्रोसीडिंग? जो भी टैक्स डिमांड किया 74 में, 73 में, या अब 74A में या 76 में, जो भी टैक्स डिमांड किया विल बी रिकवर्ड. सबसे पहले इंटीमेशन ऑफ द रिकवरी प्रोसीडिंग. एनी अमाउंट पेबल बाय द टैक्सेबल पर्सन इन पर्संस ऑफ द ऑर्डर पास्ड अंडर दिस एक्ट मस्ट बी पेड बाय सच पर्सन विद इन ए पीरियड ऑफ 3 months from the date of the service of the order. If a taxable person failed to do so, the recovery proceedings are initiated against him. Why the 3 month has been kept? Why the time limit has been kept for 3 months? In the next class, we will discuss about the appeal and revision. तो अपील में आपको आइडेंटिफाई होगा, यू विल आइडेंटिफाई इन द अपील कि आपके पास में टाइम लिमिट है 3 month का टू फाइल द अपील. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? सपोज किसी टैक्स पेयर के अगेंस्ट में डिमांड ऑर्डर इश्यू हुआ, देन ही हैज द टाइम लिमिट टू फाइल द अपील 3 month ना. एंड इफ ही विल फाइल द अपील, देन जितना भी डिमांड है वो स्टे हो जाता है, डीम टू बी स्टे. तो मतलब क्या हुआ? इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि 3 महीने का तो टाइम है ऑफिसर के ऑर्डर के अगेंस्ट में अपील फाइल करने का. टैक्स पेयर कैन फाइल दी अपील. तो 3 महीने तक तुम रिकवरी कर ही नहीं सकते आइडियली. देयरफॉर इंटेंशनली दिस टाइम इज कैप्ड एज 3 months. If a taxpayer failed to do so, the recovery proceeding. However, when the proper officer consider it expedient in the interest of the revenue, he may, for the reason to be recorded in writing, require the state taxable person to make the payment within such period less than a period of 3 months as specified. में बहुत ऐसा लग रहा है कि रेवेन्यू का नुकसान हो जाएगा. Someone will go out and leave the India and he will not come back. तो उससे रिकवरी करना और टफ हो जाएगा. Then this time limit of 3 months can be shortened. Section 79. If the payable is not paid by the person in 3 months, a recovery proceeding shall be initiated and various action may be taken by the recovery officer for realization of the government dues. Recovery of the tax can be also made from the distinct person, correct, present in the different state or UT. The option for recovery of the government dues include deduction of the money from any amount payable to the taxpayer detaining and selling the goods, or even directing any person whom the money is due, means debtors. कई बार क्या होता है, जैसे मान लो मिस्टर ए इज ए टेनेंट, ठीक है, लैंडलॉर्ड इज XYZ and there is money due against XYZ and XYZ is not making the payment, then officer may send a notice to Mr. A that instead of paying the rent to the landlord, please pay this amount to us. Similarly, XYZ is manufacturing unit and is selling the goods to multiple customer and there is some debtors, and if the officer identify that there is some debtors from the records, they can send the notice to the debtors also, attaching any property belonging to the defaulter etc. ठीक है. अब मोड ऑफ रिकवरी वन बाय वन पढ़ेंगे, बहुत सारे मोड है, विल डिस्कस एंड वन बाय वन विल ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. Recovery by the deduction from any money owed. The proper officer may deduct or may require any other specified officer to deduct. अब मिस्टर ए का जो XYZ है, जो डिफॉल्टर है, उसका ऑफिसर मान लो जो है, उसके पास में XYZ ने रिफंड एप्लीकेशन भी फाइल की है, तो वो डिमांड को एडजस्ट कर सकता है रिफंड के साथ. या मान लो उसका जो जुरिस्डिक्शन है वो कोई दूसरा SGST है, मान लो मैं बात कर रहा हूं कि उसका ऑफिसर जो रिकवरी कर रहा है वो CGST एंड उसका जुरिस्डिक्शन SGST में, और एनी अदर स्पेसिफाइड ऑफिसर, देन दे कैन टेक दैट अमाउंट फ्रॉम द स्पेसिफाइड ऑफिसर. लेट्स से उसने कस्टम में रिफंड फाइल किया, देयर इज अ रिफंड फ्रॉम द कस्टम, तो वो कस्टम ऑफिसर को डायरेक्ट कर सकते हैं कि दैट प्लीज डिडक्ट दिस अमाउंट. कहने का मतलब है कि अगर एक अथॉरिटी का डिमांड ड्यू है और दूसरी अथॉरिटी के पास में रिफंड है तो वो एडजस्ट कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. Specified officer means the officer of the central government, state government, or the government of a union territory or local authority, or the board or corporation of the company owned or controlled by the central government or state government, or the government of the UT or L local authority. Next, recovery by selling the goods under the control of the proper officer. The officer may recover or may require any other specified officer to recover the amount so payable from a defaulter by detailing and selling the goods through the process of auction, e-auction, belonging to that person which are under the control of the proper officer or other specified officer. तो डिमांड ड्यू है, रिकवर नहीं किया, लेकिन उसका टैक्स उसका है ना गुड सीज कर लिया बिकॉज ऑफ एनी रीजन. सेक्शन 129 ई वे बिल की पेनल्टीज है और 130, तो 130 में उसका गुड्स डिटेन कर लिया, तो देन दैट डिटेन्ड गुड्स फॉर एनी अदर रीजन बिकॉज ई वे बिल नहीं था, ठीक है, या कुछ और रीजन था, तो उस गुड्स को सेल किया जा सकता है अगर उस ऑफिसर के कंट्रोल में या एनी अदर स्पेसिफाइड ऑफिसर के कंट्रोल में है तो. बट ऑफिसर शैल ऑलवेज प्रिपेयर द इन्वेंटरी, estimate the market value of the goods, and proceed to sell only so much of the goods as may be required for recovering the amount payable, along with administrative expenditure incurred on the recovery process. Where the defaulter pay the amount under recovery, including any expenses incurred the process of the recovery, before the notice for auction, the officer shall cancel the process of auction and release the goods. अगर डिफॉल्टर पे कर देता है अमाउंट तो फिर ऑक्शन की रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं है, राइट, तो देन दे विल रिलीज द गुड्स. garnishing proceeding, recovery from a third person. The officer may, by notice in the prescribed form, in writing to require any other person from whom the money is due or may become due to that person, or who hold or may subsequently hold the money for on account of that person to pay to the government. जैसे मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया टेनेंट का, मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया डेटर्स का. Either forthwith upon the money becoming the due or being held within the time specified in the notice. So such money as is sufficient to pay the amount due from the person or whole of the money when it is equal or less than that amount. मतलब 1 लाख रुपए था और मान लो डेटर्स 1,30,000 का है तो ओनली 1 लाख विल बी रिकवर्ड, और डेटर्स मान लो 90,000 का, द होल मनी विल बी रिकवर्ड. एवरी पर्सन टू whom the notice, जैसे डेटर्स को या टेनेंट को जो नोटिस भेजा, shall be bound to comply that notice. वो ये नहीं कह सकता कि मैं तो इसका टैक्स पेयर हूं ही नहीं, मैं तो जीएसटी में रजिस्टर्ड भी नहीं हूं, फिर मुझे क्यों नोटिस आया. This notice will be deemed to be comply, will be bound to comply. Where any notice is issued to the post office, banking company, insurance, it shall not be necessary to produce any passbook, deposit, receipt, policy, or any other document for the purpose of any entry or endorsement or like made before payment is made, notwithstanding any rule, practice, or requirement to the contrary. In case the person to whom the notice is issued fail to make the payment in pursuance thereof to the government, the such amount shall be deemed to be, मतलब वो जो डेटर्स है उसको डिफॉल्टर मान लिया जाएगा. मतलब अभी तक डिफॉल्टर एक्सवाइजेड था, अब रिकवर करने के लिए उसके टेनेंट को नोटिस भेजा और वो टेनेंट पे नहीं कर रहा तो वो टेनेंट को डिफॉल्टर मान लिया जाएगा. एंड ऑल द कंसिक्वेंस ऑफ दिस एक्ट और द रूल्स मेड thereafter shall follow. Officer issuing such notice may at any time amend or revoke the notice or extend the time for making the payment. Any person making any payment in compliance with the notice issued shall be deemed to have made the payment under the authority of the person in default. मतलब अब अगर टेनेंट पे करता है तो मान लिया जाएगा, it will be deemed that the landlord has made the payment, defaulter has made the payment. यहाँ पे मैं टेनेंट के डिफॉल्टर की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द डिफॉल्टर XYZ जिसके लिए उसके टेनेंट को नोटिस इशू किया था DRC 22, एंड दैट द टेनेंट हैज पेड द अमाउंट, इट मींस it will be treated that this defaulter has made the payment. Further, such payment is being credited to the government shall be deemed to constitute the good and sufficient discharge of the liability of the person of the such person to the person in default to the extent of the amount specified in the note. हाँ, ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है. अब रेंट का अमाउंट टेनेंट ने गवर्नमेंट को पे कर दिया इंस्टेड ऑफ लैंडलॉर्ड, तो क्या वो लैंडलॉर्ड फर्दर रिकवर करेगा रेंट का अमाउंट? Then in that case, such payment being credited to the government shall be deemed to constitute a good and sufficient discharge of the liability of the tenant to the landlord to the extent of the amount specified in the receipt. Okay. The person discharging any liability to the person in default after servicing on him, the notice shall be personally liable to the extent of the liability discharge or to the extent of the liability of the person in default, whichever is lower. Any person discharging any liability to the person. So discharging any liability means tenant to the person in default, that is landlord XYZ. After servicing the notice shall be personally liable to the government to the extent of the liability discharge, let's say 1 lakh rupees, or to the extent of the liability of the default, whichever is lower. तो वो जितना भी उसका पेबल है वो मान लिया जाएगा उसने पे कर दिया. Where a person on whom the notice is served here under prove to the set. हाँ, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है. अब टेनेंट को नोटिस इशू हुआ, बट टेनेंट कह रहा है मैंने तो बिल्डिंग ही वैकेट कर दी, अब तो मैं उसका करंट मैं उसकी बिल्डिंग में रहता ही नहीं हूं, सो देयर इज नो अमाउंट टू बी पेबल टू दैट पर्टिकुलर एक्सवाइजेड. इन दैट केस, वेयर ए पर्सन टू whom the notice is issued prove to the satisfaction of the officer that the money जो डिमांड की है आपने नोटिस में टेनेंट से was not due at all to XYZ, to the person in default, or he did not hold any money, or on account of the person in default at the time of the notice was served on him, nor is the money demanded or any part thereof likely to become due. ना तो आज मेरा ड्यू है, ना फ्यूचर में ड्यू बनने वाला है. पॉसिबल है ना कि लेट से डेटर को नोटिस इश्यू किया, डेटर्स ने बोला मैं तो सारा पेमेंट क्लियर कर चुका हूं एंड देयर इज नो आउटस्टैंडिंग एंड ही सबमिटेड द proof of the payment, he has submitted the ledger. In that case, there is no recovery to be made. Then nothing contained in this section shall be deemed to require the person to whom the notice has been served to pay to the government and any such money thereof. ठीक है. Where the third person made in the prescribed form to the third person clearly indicating the details of the liabilities to discharge. और वो सर्टिफिकेट उसके काम में आएगा जब भी वो वापस लैंडलॉर्ड मांग रहा है या वापस क्रेडिटर जो भी डिमांड कर रहे हैं, सप्लाई अगर डिमांड करे मनी तो दैट सर्टिफिकेट वुड बी अवेलेबल विद इट. सो लेट्स टेक अनदर ब्रेक ऑफ 10 मिनट एंड विल स्टार्ट अगेन. ठीक है अशोक जी, छोटा सा ब्रेक स्टार्ट करते हैं. We have discussed the recovery, garnishing proceeding, etc. Let's move further. Recovery, sale by sale of movable or immovable property. So the proper officer, in accordance with the rules to be made in this behalf, disdain any movable or immovable property belonging to under the control and detain the same until the amount payable is paid. In case any part of the said amount payable or of the cost of the distress or keeping the property remain unpaid for a period of 30 days. Next, after that, such distress may cause that property to be sold through auction, including e-auction. And the sale proceed may satisfy the amount payable and the cost, including the cost of sale, that remain unpaid and shall render the surplus, if any, to that person. The proper officer shall prepare the list of the movable and immovable property to the defaulter, estimate their value as per the prevalent market price, and the issue and order of the attachment or distraint and a notice of the sale prohibiting in any transaction with regard to the movable or immovable property as the case may be. In case of the attachment, movable property or immovable property. In case of immovable, the order shall be affixed on the property till the confirmation of the sale, and movable shall seize the property and take into the custody. Stamp duty, any other taxes, fees payable on transfer of the property shall be paid by the transferee to the government. Any property in debt not secured by the negotiable instrument, a share in corporation, or any other movable property not in the possession of the defaulter, except for the property deposited or in custody of court, shall be attached. जो प्रॉपर्टी कस्टडी कोर्ट में, उसके अलावा जितनी भी प्रॉपर्टी है, can be attached in the manner provided in the rule 151 that we will discuss later on. Where any claim is preferred, any objections is raised with regard to the attachment or distraint by the person claiming that he has some interest in or was in possession of the property in the question, the officer shall investigate the same and postpone the sale till such time. मतलब किसी अदर पार्टी ने कोई ऑब्जेक्शन दिया है कि ये प्रॉपर्टी में मेरा भी इंटरेस्ट है, इन दैट केस if the proper officer find the merit in his claim or objection, upon investigation, the officer will release the property wholly or partly. Otherwise, the officer will reject the claim and proceed with the sale. When the defaulter pay the amount under recovery, including any expenses incurred on the process of the recovery, before issuance of the notice, the officer shall cancel the process of auction and release the goods. The amount so realized from the sale of the goods or conveyance or movable or immovable property for the recovery of the dues from a defaulter or for recoveries of the penalty payable under section 129 subsection 3. 129 की पेनल्टी क्या है? वो पेनल्टी है जब कभी जैसे गुड्स रास्ते में है, मूवमेंट है, इन ट्रांजिट है, एंड देन गुड्स हैज बीन डिटेन्ड बाय द ऑफिसर बिकॉज ऑफ द नॉन अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ ई-वे बिल एटसेट्रा. देन अगर ऐसा कोई गुड्स सेल किया जाता है तो अमाउंट जो रियलाइज होता है, then first be a portion against the administrative cost. Next, amount to be recovered, appropriated against the amount to be recovered or the payment of the penalty payable. ठीक है. Next, appropriated against any other amount due from the defaulter under CGST, SGST, IGST जो भी है. And अगर कोई बैलेंस बचता है तो it will be credited to the cash ledger to the owner of the goods or the conveyance as the case may be, in case the person is registered in the GST. एंड अगर पर्सन रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है तो क्या होगा? ये उसके बैंक अकाउंट में क्रेडिट कर दिया जाएगा. वेयर इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल टू पे द बैलेंस ऑफ द सेल प्रोसीड एज पर द अबव, देन द पर्सन कंसर्न विद इन ए पीरियड ऑफ 6 months फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ द सेल, फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ द सेल और द कन्वेंस of the conveyance or such further period as may be officer may allow, such balance shall be deposited with the fund. कौन सा fund? Which fund? What is the name of the fund? कौन से फंड में डिपॉजिट किया जाएगा ये अमाउंट? कंज्यूमर वेलफेयर फंड, कंज्यूमर वेलफेयर फंड, ठीक है। CWF, right. When the property is to be sold is a negotiable instrument or the shares, the officer may instead of selling it in the public auction, sell such instrument or the share through the broker, and the said broker shall deposit to the government so much of the proceed of the sale reduced by his commission as may be required for the discharge of the amount under the recovery and pay the remaining to the owner of the instrument or a shares. Any officer who has a duty to perform in connection with the sale will not acquire any interest in the property sold. No such sale will be taken place on Sunday and other general public holiday recognized by the government. Proper officer may seek assistance from the police recovery as a arrears of land revenue. See, officer may prepare the certificate in the prescribed form signed by him, specify the amount due, and send it to collector of the district in which the person owns any property or reside or carries his business, or to any officer authorized by the government, and the said collector or the said officer on receipt of such certificate shall proceed to recover the amount specified as if it was the area of the land revenue. ठीक है, अभी हमने 5 मोड पढ़ लिए। एक या 2 मोड मुझे बता पाएंगे कौन कौन से मोड अभी तक हमने पढ़े हैं? टोटल 5 मोड पढ़े हैं। कैन यू प्लीज स्पेसिफाई 1 और 2 मोड ऑफ द रिकवरी? एक दो मोड का रिकवरी का मोड बताइए। 5-10 मिनट रिवीजन कर लेते हैं, देन विल प्रोसीड फर्दर। लेट्स स्पेंड 5-10 मिनट ऑन द रिवीजन एंड देन विल प्रोसीड। एक या दो मोड, जो भी हमने अभी तक 5 मोड पढ़ लिए, राइट? वन और टू मोड। सेल ऑफ द इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी या मूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी, ओके, थ्रू ऑक्शन, करेक्ट। सेल ऑफ द गुड्स जो उसके कंट्रोल में है, और राइट, सेल ऑफ गुड्स। इन्वेंट्री जो उसके पोजीशन में है या किसी और ऑफिसर के पोजीशन में है, राइट, ओके। Let's have one some more question. What is the time limit to issue the notice in 74A? What is the time limit to issue the notice? 3.5 years. Okay. And 42 months. Perfectly okay. And what is the time limit to issue the order? What is the time limit to issue the order? 1 year from the date of the so cause notice. Correct. And can it be extended? If yes, how many period? क्या इसको एक्सटेंड किया जा सकता है? If yes, how many period? कितना एक्सटेंड किया जा सकता है? बाई 6 more month. कितना एक्सटेंड किया जा सकता है? बाई 6 more month. This 3.5 year would be counted from which date? 3.5 year would be counted from which date? Date of like 3.5 year would be counted from which date? Due date of annual letter. Correct. There are the total 5 default, in which one default is not. Tell me first 5 default. In short, you can tell me there are total 5 default which we have talked about here. Can you tell me what are the 5 default? 5 डिफॉल्ट की हमने बात की थी, राइट? करेक्ट। नॉट पेड और शॉर्ट पेड, दो। आईटीसी रॉन्गली अवेल्ड और यूटिलाइज्ड, दो। चार। एंड देन रिफंड। अच्छा, इन पांच में से विच टाइप ऑफ द डिफॉल्ट will not be, see, for 3.5 years, for calculation of 3.5 years, we normally take the due date of furnishing of annual return, but for which default we are not taking the furnishing of annual return. ड्यू डेट की हम बात नहीं करते, हम एक्चुअल उस डिफॉल्ट से काउंट करते हैं, विच इज द डिफॉल्ट जिसमें हम, कौन सा वो डिफॉल्ट है जिसमें हम 3.5 year की काउंटिंग ड्यू डेट ऑफ एनुअल रिटर्न से नहीं करते हैं, डायरेक्टली उस डिफॉल्ट से करते हैं। आंसर इज एब्सोल्युटली, दैट इज रिफंड, इरोनियस रिफंड। तो रिफंड जब डेट ऑफ द ग्रांट ऑफ द इरोनियस रिफंड वहां से काउंटिंग होगी, ना कि जिस साल का रिफंड पर्टेन करता है। करेक्ट। ठीक है। पेनल्टी नॉन फ्रॉड केस, पेनल्टी कितना परसेंटेज है? अगर प्री सोकोज नोटिस है, व्हाट इज द पेनल्टी? प्री सोकोज नोटिस, व्हाट इज द पेनल्टी इन द नॉन फ्रॉड केस? व्हाट सी, पहला प्री सोकोज नोटिस, जीरो पेनल्टी। एंड इफ इट इज आफ्टर एससीएन, देन आफ्टर सोकोज नोटिस, देन if the amount is paid up to 60 days from the so cause notice, then what is the component of the penalty? Zero. What is the penalty? Zero, right? And अगर 60 दिन में पे नहीं करते, देन ऑर्डर अगर इश्यू हो जाता है, एंड ऑर्डर से कितना दिन के अंदर, ऑर्डर अगर ऑर्डर तक पे नहीं किया, ऑर्डर इश्यू हो गया, देन व्हाट इज द पेनल्टी? 10% और 10,000, विच एवर इज हायर। सी, पॉइंट टू बी नोटेड, if this is non-fraud case, and if it is fraud case, then what is the slab? If it is fraud case, then what is the slab? फ्रॉड केस है, अगर प्री एसटीएन है तो कितना परसेंट पेनल्टी? प्री सोकोज नोटिस है, कितना परसेंट पेनल्टी? प्री सोकोज नोटिस है, कितना परसेंट पेनल्टी? प्री सोकोज नोटिस है तो 15% पेनल्टी। और वो नोटिस इश्यू हो गया, लेकिन 60 डेज तक अगर पे कर देते तो कितना परसेंट पेनल्टी? अगर नोटिस इश्यू हो गया है बट ही इज रेडी टू पे द पेनल्टी, देन 25% of the penalty. Correct. And if order is being issued, then how much penalty? 50% of the penalty. सेल्फ असेस टैक्स है तो मतलब, कैन यू गिव मी वन एग्जांपल ऑफ सेल्फ असेस टैक्स? व्हाट इज द सेल्फ असेस टैक्स? कैन यू गिव मी वन एग्जांपल ऑफ सेल्फ असेस टैक्स? R1 इज ग्रेटर देन 3B। R1 में रिपोर्ट कर दिया बट 3B में नहीं किया। अगर सेल्फ असेस टैक्स है तो क्या स्पेशल पॉइंट है? इफ इट इज अ सेल्फ असेस टैक्स, सेल्फ असेस लाइबिलिटी है, तो व्हाट इज द स्पेशल पॉइंट? Do they need to route the matter through SCN mandatorily? Do they need to issue the so cause notice mandatorily? Answer is no, not mandatorily, because it start with the notwithstanding anything contained. What is the concept of double jeopardy? What is the concept of double jeopardy? No double punishment for the same wrong act to the same person. ठीक, अंडर द टू डिफरेंट सेपरेट प्रोविजन इट टैक्स कैन, यस यस, जस्ट खाली है ना पनिशमेंट लिख दीजिएगा संजय, टैक्स की बात नहीं कर रहे हम, खाली पनिशमेंट की बात करें, मतलब पेनल्टी की बात करें बेसिकली, ठीक है, दैट्स एवरीथिंग, अदरवाइज ओके। अगर टैक्स, इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी है जो नोटिस में लिखा है, क्या ऑर्डर में उससे डिफरेंट हो सकता है? कैन द ऑर्डर बी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम फॉर द वट एवर द टैक्स अमाउंट इज बीइंग डिमांडेड इन द नोटिस? हायर हो सकता है? कैन इट बी हायर? कैन इट बी हायर? इसने ऑर्डर में डिमांड किया 1 लाख रुपए, बट नोटिस 80,000 का था, टैक्स कंपोनेंट की बात कर रहा हूँ। The tax interest penalty shall not exceed the amount specified in the notice. Correct, correct. It should not be. Absolutely correct. बट अगर मान लो किसी कोर्ट अथॉरिटी ट्रिब्यूनल के कारण अगर टैक्स का अमाउंट चेंज हो गया, क्या इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी ऑटोमेटिकली चेंज हो जाएगी या उसे चेंज करना पड़ेगा? विल इट बी ऑटोमेटिकली मॉडिफाइड? मतलब कंसीडर दैट जो ऑटोमेटिकली चेंज हो जाएगा, ऑटो चेंज हो जाएगा, या उसे चेंज करके वापस नोटिस इश्यू करना पड़ेगा? नो। अगर इंटरेस्ट स्पेसिफाई करना भूल गया ऑफिसर नोटिस में, तो इंटरेस्ट पेबल है या नहीं, पे नॉट पेबल? Officer has not specified in the notice and order the interest component. Will it be payable or not payable? It will be always payable even if it is not specified in the adjudication order. हमने कहा था ना, टैक्स collected but not deposited. What is the time limit? Tax collected but not deposited within how many days? Tax collected but not deposited within how many days? Within 30 days. तो इसकी रिकवरी ऑटोमेटिकली बन जाएगी। एंड उसमें क्या पेनल्टी का वेवर है? अगर प्री एससीएन वो डिपॉजिट कर देता है, पोस्ट एससीएन करता है, पोस्ट ऑर्डर करता है, विल देयर बी एनी वेवर ऑफ द पेनल्टी? द आंसर इज नो, देयर विल बी नो वेवर ऑफ द पेनल्टी। ये बात आप थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट है मतलब। सो हम नॉर्मली कहते हैं ऑर्डर शुड स्पेसिफाई, मतलब ऑर्डर मस्ट बी स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर। तो स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर का मतलब क्या हुआ? व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर? से नॉर्मली वी यूज द वर्ड की ऑर्डर मस्ट बी स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर। तो इस स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर का मतलब क्या है? मतलब व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ द स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर? स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर मींस इसमें जितने भी रिलेवेंट फैक्ट है जिसके ऊपर ये डिसीजन डिराइव किया है, ऑल ग्राउंड शुड बी स्पेसिफाइड इन दैट ऑर्डर। टैक्स रॉन्गली कलेक्टेड एंड पेड टू द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट, सीजीएसटी एसजीएसटी, but subsequently it is held to the IGST or vice versa. Will the interest be leviable? No interest. And there was a clarification. The subsequently held means. So there was a clarification regarding the subsequently held. Subsequently held means subsequently held means see tax wrongly collected, short paid, not paid. मतलब मैं उसकी बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, अभी मैं सिर्फ बात कर रहा हूं कि आईजीएसटी पे करना था बट सी और एस पे कर दिया और वाइस वर्सा, देन आइदर बाय द ऑफिसर और बाय द टैक्स पेयर हिमसेल्फ, both are covered. Answer is yes, both are covered. And normally, what is the time limit to start the recovery proceeding from the date of the order? Within how many months? If the amount is not deposited, then they will start the recovery. कितने महीने में अगर अमाउंट डिपॉजिट नहीं किया तो रिकवरी स्टार्ट हो जाएगी। रिकवरी प्रोसीडिंग आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट सेक्शन 78। Normally, recovery would be started after the expiry of 3 months. Why 3 months has been given? Why 3 months has been given? Why 3 months has been given? Because it is also the appeal time. It is also the appeal time. Okay. So by this we have covered almost all the point which we have discussed today. हमने सारी बात कर ली. Let's start. ये तो हमने पढ़ ही लिया था कलेक्टर वाला पॉइंट। मजिस्ट्रेट, कलेक्टर कैसे रिकवर करेगा? एज इफ इट इज ए रिकवरी ऑफ अरियर ऑफ द लैंड रेवेन्यू। और मजिस्ट्रेट कैसे कलेक्ट करेंगे? लाइक इट इज ए फाइन, notwithstanding anything contained in CRPC, Code of Criminal Procedure. The officer may file an application to the magistrate in the prescribed form to recover from the person concerned amount specified thereunder, and then magistrate will proceed to recover as if it were a fine imposed by him through the execution of decree, where any amount is payable to the defaulter in the execution of a decree of a civil court for the payment of the money or sale in enforcement of the mortgage or charge, the officer shall send a request to the court, and the court shall, subject to the provision of CPC, execute the attached decree and credit the net proceed of settlement of the amount recoverable. Surety, where any person has become the surety for the amount due by the defaulter, he may be proceeded against this chapter as if he were the defaulter. Recovery from the company in liquidation, where the company is under liquidation as specified in sections 88, the commissioner notify the liquidator for recovery of any amount of TIP, tax interest penalty. What is the other provision? Where the terms of any bond or other instrument executed under this act or the rules made thereunder provide that any amount due under the said instrument may be recovered in the manner laid down in the subsection 1, amount may, without prejudice to any other mode of the recovery, be recoverable in accordance with the provision. किसकी बात करें? Any other provision recovering the tax, governing the recovery of tax, where amount of the tax interest penalty is payable by the person to the government under any of the provision of this act or the rules made thereunder and which remain unpaid, the officer of the state tax or UT tax during the course of the recovery of the said tax may recover the amount as if it is a arrear of the state tax or union territory tax and credit the same amount to the government. उसके बाद में क्या? Where amount recovered is less than the amount due to the central government and state government, amount to be credited to the respective government shall be in proportion to the amount due to such ड्यू टू इस, मतलब ऐसा नहीं है जब स्टेट की रिकवरी करने वाला जाएगा तो पहले वो जितना अमाउंट रिकवर करेगा मान लिया जाएगा जीएसटी का बचेगा तो मैं सी को दूंगा, ऐसा नहीं है. इट विल बी इन द अपोर्शनमेंट, प्रोपोर्शनेट, प्रोपोर्शन टू द अमाउंट ड्यू. Clarification on the legal position of the voluntary payment of tax during the inspection, seizure, investigation. During the course of search, inspection, investigation, sometime the taxpayer opt to deposit their partial or full liability arising out of the issue pointed out by the department during the course. Instances have been noticed where some of the taxpayer, after voluntarily depositing, have at least used force, coercion by the officer for recovering during the course of search, inspection and investigation. Might be you have also heard the same thing कि वो कहते मतलब in the course of search seizure, officer is creating the pressure on the taxpayer to deposit immediately. They are not waiting anything. Consequently, the legal position of the voluntary payment of the tax has been clarified for ensuring the correct application of the law and for protecting the interest of the taxpayer. Under the CGST Act, the taxpayer have an option to make voluntary payment of the tax. Such voluntary payment of the tax before SCN is permitted. This helps the taxpayer in discharging the admitted liability, self-ascertained or as ascertained by the tax officer without having to bear the burden of interest, and may also save him for higher penalty as the case may be. So अब आप कहेंगे कि सर यहाँ पे 73, 74 क्यों लिखा हुआ है? Why not 74A? Because this clarification was issued prior to insertion of 74 capital A. A recovery of the tax not paid, short paid can be made under the provision of Section 79 only after following the legal process, like issuance of the notice, demand order, etc. Therefore, therefore there may not arise any situation where recovery of the tax has to be made by the officer during the search. However, the law does not bar the taxpayer. So voluntarily pay करना चाहता है कर सकता है, but he cannot force. That is the only point. ठीक है. Instruction number 1 dated this. Payment of tax or any other installment section 80. Suppose आपकी GSTR1 में लाइबिलिटी है 1 लाख रुपए की. क्या आप 1 लाख को पे करने के लिए आप टैक्स ऑफिसर से डिमांड कर सकते हैं कि आप मुझे इंस्टॉलमेंट का ऑप्शन दो? दैट वी विल डिस्कस. कंसिडर द वेरियस बिजनेस एस्पेक्ट प्रोविजन ऑफ रूल सेक्शन 80 पढ़ते हैं हम लोग. ए टैक्सेबल पर्सन seeking extension of the time for payment of tax or any other amount due shall furnish an application. तो सबसे पहले क्या करेगा? टैक्स पेयर विल रिक्वेस्ट टू द ऑफिसर दैट एप्लीकेशन कि आप मुझे इंस्टॉलमेंट का परमिशन दीजिए. कमिश्नर call for the report from the jurisdictional officer about the financial ability. Commissioner, after consideration, for the reason to be recorded in writing, extend the time for payment or allow the payment of any amount due under this act. So, other than the amount due as per the self-assessed in any return by such person in monthly installment not exceeding 24. कितना installment मिलेगा? Maximum 24 installment. Subject to the payment of interest under section 50 and subject to such condition and limitation as may be prescribed. तो 1,20,000 की लाइबिलिटी है इन द GSTR1 which he could not pay. तो he will ask, will he be able to ask the installment कि सर आप मुझे कमिशन, कैन ही मेक द रिक्वेस्ट कि दैट दिस 1,20,000 का लाइबिलिटी टू बी अपोर्शन इन 24 months and every month I will deposit 20,000 with interest. Will it be possible? The answer is no. Yes. Why no? Ayush, why no? Because it is written other than the amount due as per the liability of self-assessed in any return. और अभी हमने बात किया था ना, सेल्फ असिस्ट इंक्लूड दी liability reported in R1 but not paid in 3B. Correct? So that is self-assessed liability. Can the self-assessed liability be installed? Can be requested for installment? Answer is no. It will be any other liability. So it can be like कोई demand हो गया, something like that. ठीक है. हाँ. However, the default of any one installment, then the whole outstanding will become due immediately. मतलब अगर एक इंस्टॉलमेंट में डिफॉल्ट किया, इट मींस बाकी जितना भी अमाउंट ड्यू है उसके लिए इंस्टॉलमेंट एप्लीकेबल है, इट विल इमीडिएटली बी रिकवरेबल. फैसिलिटी ऑफ द पेमेंट इन इंस्टॉलमेंट इज नॉट अलाउड, हैज ऑलरेडी डिफॉल्टेड ऑन पेमेंट ऑफ एनी अमाउंट अंडर जीएसटी फॉर व्हिच द रिकवरी प्रोसेस इज ऑन. Taxable person has not been allowed to make the payment in installment in the preceding financial year and amount of which इंस्टॉलमेंट फैसिलिटी दैट इज लेस देन 25,000. तो अगर 25,000 से कम है तो उसके लिए इंस्टॉलमेंट नहीं दिया जाएगा. कौन कौन सी 3 सिचुएशन है? अगर उसने ऑलरेडी डिफॉल्ट किया है, या उसे परमिटेड नहीं हुआ लास्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर में, या अमाउंट 25,000 से ज्यादा है, कम है. ट्रांसफर ऑफ द प्रॉपर्टी टू बी वॉइड इन सर्टेन केसेस. सेक्शन 81 सेज कि दैट व्हेन पर्सन आफ्टर एनी अमाउंट हैज बिकम ड्यू क्रिएट ए चार्ज और part with the property belonging to him or in possession by way of the sale, mortgage, exchange, or any other mode of the transfer whatsoever of any of his property in favor of any other person with the intention of defrauding the government revenue, then तो जो वो ट्रांसफर है वो ट्रांसफर आपका void हो जाएगा. Such charge of the transfer shall be void against any person. However, such charge shall not be void if it is made for adequate consideration, in good faith and without notice of the pendency of the such proceeding under this act. तो अगर ये प्रॉपर और गुड फेथ में है तो बोनाफाइड ट्रांजेक्शन है, तो ये वॉइड नहीं होगा. टैक्स टू बी फर्स्ट चार्ज ऑन द प्रॉपर्टी notwithstanding anything contrary contained in the law for the timing in force. IBC, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. Any amount payable by the taxable person or any other person on account of the tax, interest, penalty which he is liable to pay to the government shall be the first charge. On account of the tax and penalty which he is liable to pay to the government will be the first charge on the property. Provisional attachment. प्रोविजनल अटैचमेंट जैसा नाम बताते हैं, टेम्पररी पीरियड के लिए अटैचमेंट किया जाएगा. व्हाट इज द सेक्शन 83? सेक्शन 83 इज वेरी वेरी मतलब बीइंग famous, I can say, being multiple time it is being used by the officer to recover the revenue, where after the intimation the commissioner is of the opinion that for the purpose of protecting the interest of the revenue it is necessary it is necessary he may by order in writing attach the provisionally any property including the bank account belonging to the taxable person or any person specified in 122(1)(a). ये वाला प्रोविजन बाद में ऐड किया. क्या है? बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग प्रोविजन है. 122(1)(a) पेनल्टी सेक्शन है कि अगर कोई मास्टर माइंड करता है, सी नॉर्मली क्या होता है, से फॉर एग्जांपल देयर इज ए मिस्टर ए, ठीक है, उसने क्या किया, उसने अपनी लेबर एम्प्लॉय के नाम पे जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन ले लिया एंड इज इन्वॉल्विंग इन द फेक ट्रांजेक्शन. नाउ हु इज द रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन? वो लेबर, वो एम्प्लॉय. माइट बी दे आर नॉट अवेयर एट ऑल. तो जो एम्प्लॉयर है, जो ऑनर है, वो कौन है? वो मास्टरमाइंड है. ही इज नॉट यूजिंग हिज पैन नंबर, हिज आधार कार्ड नंबर, नॉट एट ऑल. देन न्यू सेक्शन वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन द पेनल्टी 122(1)(a) एंड द क्रॉस रेफरेंस वाज मेड इन द सेक्शन 83. क्यों किया क्रॉस रेफरेंस? क्योंकि उसकी प्रॉपर्टी भी अटैच की जा सकती है टू टेक द मतलब टू रिकवर द गवर्नमेंट रेवेन्यू. ठीक है, ये अमेंडमेंट था एंड इट इज वेरी नाइस. Every such provisional attachment shall cease to have effect after the expiry of the 1 year. Rule 159, where the commissioner decide to attach any property including bank account in accordance with the aforesaid provision, he shall pass an order to the effect mentioning therein details of the property which is attached. Commissioner shall send a copy of the order of the attachment to the concerned revenue authority or transport authority or any such authority to place income bars on the said movable which shall be removed on the written instruction from the commissioner or expiry of the 1 year, whichever is earlier. मतलब जो वो अटैचमेंट किया है प्रॉपर्टी पर, बैंक अकाउंट पर, वो shall be ceased to have the effect once either instruction has been received from the commissioner. Let's say after 6 months, commissioner feel that there is no problem and this amount has been paid, so he will release the bank account or any attachment. Then in that case, if the bank or etc. shall receive the order, then they will open the bank account, attachment will be released, or 1 year is being expired, then automatically it will be released even without the intimation from the commissioner. A copy of the order of the provisional attachment of the property including bank account shall also be sent to the person whose property is being attached, where the property attached is perishable or hazardous in the nature. Then if the taxable person pay the amount equivalent to the market price or the amount that is become payable, whichever is lower, then such property will be released. However, if he fail to pay the amount referred above, then commissioner may dispose of the property. Any person whose property is attached may at any time of the attachment file an objection to the effect that the property attached was or is not liable to be attached, and if the commissioner may, after affording the opportunity of the being heard, then release the said property by an order. Commissioner, upon being satisfied that the property was or is no longer liable for attachment, release the property by issuing an order. Attachment of the debt and shares. Rule 151. A debt not secured by the negotiable instrument, a shares in corporation or any other movable property not in the possession of defaulter, except for the property deposited or in the custody of court, shall be attached by a written order in the prescribed form prohibiting, in the case of a debt, the creditor from recovering the debt and the debtors from making the payment until the receipt of the further order from the specified office, from the proper officer. In case of the shares, the person in whose name the shares may be standing from transferring the same or receiving any dividend thereon. In any other case, the person in the possession of the same from giving it to the defaulter. Copy of the order shall be affixed on some conspicuous part of the officer of the office of the proper officer, or another copy shall be sent in case of the debt to the debtors, and in case of the shares to the registered address of the corporation, and in case of the other movable property to the possession of that property in the timing force. Debtors may pay the amount of his debt to the officer and shall be deemed to be paid by the defaulter. Rule 152. Attachment of the property in the custody of the court or the public officer. When the property to be attached is in the custody of the court or the public officer, the proper officer shall send the order of the attachment to the court requesting that property and any interest or dividend become payable may be held till the recovery of the amount payable. Attachment of interest in partnership. When the property to be attached consists of an interest of the defaulter being a partner in the partnership property, the proper officer may make an order charging the shares of the partner in the partnership property and profit with payment of the amount due under the certificate, and maybe the same or subsequent order appoint a receiver where already shares of the partner profit were already declared or accruing, or any other money which may become due in respect of the partnership and direct account, and inquire that order for sale of the interest in as the case may be required. The other partner shall at the liberty at any time to redeem the interest charged, or in case of the sale being directed to purchase the same. Just I told you that I will again open that particular GST portal and explain. ठीक है, तो मैं एक बार ये लास्ट पार्ट है सेक्शन 86 and that I will discuss. Just allow me time so that I can show you where is the notice as order etc is being issued. ठीक है ना, तो आपको भी थोड़ा सा प्रैक्टिकल आइडिया लग जाएगा. This is the government portal. I am into the services, user services, and view notice and order. Now, there are two tabs, notice and order, additional notice and order. So normally registration related notices and order are being issued in this particular tab. Any additional notices are being issued in this tab. Additional notice, 73 ka notice, 74 ka notice, whatever the notice is being there will be issued in this tab only. Okay. And then if you like to make the payment like DRC03, then you can go to the payment, create the or user services and go to the DRC03. Here you can search already the DRC03 which you made. If you like to make the new DRC03, to my application, select the DRC03 voluntarily payment and then click on the new application. Now this is DRC03. So you can select the codes of the payment. So like whatever we have discussed that he shall make the payment and inform the officer, that will be this DRC03. कौन से सेक्शन में पेमेंट कर रहा है, एनुअल रिटर्न में तो सेक्शन 44 होगा, राइट. लेट्स से कोई बिफोर इश्यूएंस ऑफ द सो कॉज नोटिस है, ठीक है. So once I will select the before issuance of the so called notice, then the notice has to be there. If notice is not there, then he will not allow. ठीक है, mismatch between 1 and 3B. कौन सा section है, like which section is there? So likewise, you have to make the payment. So this is like part where we can see. This is only I like to. I'm excited. Indeed, sir. I'm excited to that. So anything else which you like to see? See, for example, there is any notice is being issued. Then what you will do? You will make the payment after issuance. See, you know that penalty slab is changed 0% before SCN, yeah, 15% if it is a fraud case, non-fraud case. So you have to select accordingly. Now, after issuance of the so-called notice, SCN का reference manual entry. Why manual entry? Because there is no SCN in this login. Correct. And then SCN, financial year, for which you like to make the payment. After issuance, if it is a before issuance, you are able to understand now why these codes of payment has been given. हमने अभी जो बात की थी before SCN, after SCN or after order. Let's say if it is after order, then I will make the payment here. Outstanding demand, there is no outstanding demand. And one more thing I like to explain, that there is a lasers. So when any demand is created, whether it is on account of the return or it is on account of any other return, it will come in this electronic liability register. What is that? Electronic liability register would consist of two parts. Part one, returns related liability. Returns related liability, it could be late fees, it could be interest, it could be tax liability. ठीक है, तो जो भी रिटर्न्स रिलेटेड लाइबिलिटी में आप पेमेंट करते हैं, दैट विल बी रिकॉर्डेड हियर. पहले वो लाइबिलिटी क्रिएट करेगा, फिर वो पेमेंट करेगा. एनी अदर लाइबिलिटी मींस अदर देन रिटर्न मींस कोई डिमांड ऑर्डर इशू हो गया इस टैक्स किसी भी टैक्स पेयर के केस में, देन दैट डिमांड विल कम एज ए लाइबिलिटी एंड व्हेन ही डिस्चार्ज द पेमेंट इट विल बी गेट रिड्यूस्ड. तो लाइबिलिटी मान लो 5000 की क्रिएट हुई एंड जब पेमेंट 5000 का किया तो 5000 माइनस 5000 जीरो हो जाएगा. सो बाय दिस आई होप इट इज क्लियर. दिस इज व्हाट आई लाइक टू एक्सप्लेन. एनीथिंग एल्स और इट इज ओके? यही मुझे आपको थोड़ा प्रैक्टिकली बता रहा था. दैट्स इट. ठीक है, अब मैं वापस आता हूं, लास्ट पार्ट को डिस्कस कर लेता हूं. कंटिन्यूएशन. ठीक है ना. हम जब अपील में आएंगे तो मैं कोशिश करूंगा कुछ और पार्ट को एक्सप्लेन करने का. थोड़ा थोड़ा पोर्टल को हम टच करते जाएंगे, तो बाय विच यू आर द थ्योरेटिकल एज वेल एज प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपोजर. Continuation and validation of the certain recovery proceeding where any notice of the demand in respect of any tax, interest, penalty, interest, or any other amount payable under this act, hereinafter in this section referred to as government dues, is served upon any taxable person or any other person and any appeal revision is filed. Try to understand. Where any notice in respect of tax, interest, penalty is served, ठीक है, and any appeal और रिवीजन. क्या है अपील और क्या है रिवीजन? दैट इज अवर नेक्स्ट चैप्टर, नेक्स्ट क्लासेस के ऊपर. ठीक है. इज फाइल्ड और एनी अदर प्रोसीडिंग इज इनिशिएटेड इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट ड्यूज, then what? Where such government dues are enhanced in the appeal, revision or other proceeding, the commissioner shall serve upon the taxable person the notice of demand in respect of the amount by which it has been enhanced, and any recovery proceeding in relation to the government dues are recovered by the notice of the demand before the disposal of that appeal. Revision or any other proceeding may, without the service of the fresh notice of the demand, be continued from the stage at which the proceeding stood immediately before the appeal. तो जो प्रोसेस जो स्टेज अपील के पहले थी वही स्टेज से वापस स्टार्ट हो जाएगा. Where the government dues are reduced, अब ऊपर क्या था? इंक्रीज हो गया. अगर रिड्यूस हो गया तो क्या होगा? It shall not be necessary for the commissioner to serve the fresh notice. पहली बात. दूसरा, the commissioner shall give the intimation of the reduction to the appropriate authority जिसके पास भी वो recovery proceeding pending है. Any recovery which is initiated on the basis of the initial demand may be continued, but वो reduced amount से continue रहेगी. Proceeding conducted under IBC covered under the term other proceeding in section 84. The word other proceeding is not defined in the GST. It has to be mentioned that adjudicating authority and appellate authority under IBC are quasi-judicial authority constituted to deal with the civil dispute pertaining to the insolvency and bankruptcy. For instances, under IBC, NCLT serve as an adjudicating authority for insolvency proceeding, which are intimated on the application from any stakeholder, like creditors, debtors, firms, employee, and pass an order approving the resolution plan. as the proceeding conducted by the IBC also adjudicate the government dues pending under the GST. Offer under existing law against the corporate debtor. The same appear to be covered under the term other proceeding in the section 84. This part has been clarified by the circular. By this, our chapter has been completed. Now, I'll just go to the end of this chapter and try to read 171 is very good circular, actually, I can say. There are many other provisions. These are, again, I can say that it is related to the section 73, 74, that is okay. ठीक है, but एक बार रीड कर लेते हैं, ठीक है ना, थोड़ा बेटर रहेगा. एक तो मॉनेटरी लिमिट, पहले मैं इस पे आता हूं. ये सर्कुलर 171 है. क्या है सर्कुलर 171? In case where the registered person A has issued the tax invoice to the another registered person B without any underlying supply, मतलब सिर्फ इनवॉइस का ट्रेडिंग हुआ है, there is no actual supply, whether such transaction will be considered as supply under section 7, since there has only been issuance of the tax invoice and without the underlying supply, therefore such activity does not satisfy the criteria of the supply. तो ये supply तो नहीं है, ठीक है. Whether any demand or recovery can be made from A in respect of the said transaction under section 73 या 74, ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है. मतलब इसमें क्या है, जिसने सिर्फ एक इनवॉइस किया है, क्या उसके अगेंस्ट में 73, 74 हो सकता है क्या? As there is no supply by A to B, hence no tax liability arise against Mr. A. क्या था हमारा? Tax not paid or short paid, erroneously refunded, ITC wrongly availed and or utilized. तो क्या टैक्स है ये अगर सप्लाई नहीं है? तो उसने कहा नहीं, टैक्स लाइबिलिटी नहीं है. And accordingly, no demand and recovery can be made under section 73, 74. तो इस पर्सन ए के अगेंस्ट में 73, 74 तो इनिशिएट नहीं किया जा सकता. Beside, no penal action under the provision is required to be. The registered person A, however, be liable for penal action under section 122, subsection 1, clause 2. For issuance of any tax invoice without supply. तो वहां की पेनल्टी है, वो पेनल्टी आप इनिशिएट कर सकते हो, बट ये पेनल्टी आप इनिशिएट नहीं कर सकते. दैट इज क्लियर. A registered person has issued tax invoice to the another registered person B without any underlying supply. B avail ITC on the same on the basis of tax invoice. ठीक है. अब B ने जो ITC अवेल किया, उसके बाद उसने क्या किया, फर्दर इश्यू किया इनवॉइस, और उसने वो आईटीसी जो अवेल की थी ना, उसने उसको यूज कर लिया फॉर द पेमेंट ऑफ द टैक्स. क्या बी विल बी लाइबल फॉर द डिमांड एंड रिकवरी ऑफ द सेड आईटीसी along with the penal action under the provision of 73, 74? Now this answer would be 73, 74 में 5 बातें हैं. तो लास्ट 2 बात क्या है? ITC wrongly availed and utilized. Since the B has availed and utilized the fraudulent ITC on the basis of the tax invoice without receiving the goods, which is violation of 16(2)(b. क्या कहता है 16(2)(b)? Goods or services to be received be liable for the demand and recovery under 73, 74 along with the interest. Further, 75 subsection 3 says, क्या अगर आपने 73, 74 की पेनल्टी स्टार्ट कर दी है किसी के अगेंस्ट में, यू विल नॉट इनिशिएट द एनी अदर प्रोसीडिंग अगेंस्ट द सेम पर्सन. मतलब आपने क्या किया, 73, 74 कर दिया, पैरेलली आपने क्या कर दिया, लेट्स से आपने 122 इनिशिएट कर दिया, विच इज नॉट परमिसिबल. No penalty for the said act can be imposed on B. ठीक है, that is 122. A has issued the tax invoice to B without underlying supply and B avail the ITC. वो 2 क्वेश्चन हम कर चुके हैं. Now, on the basis of the tax invoice and further pass the ITC to the another registered person C without underlying supply of the goods, whether B would be liable for demand and recovery in penal action under 73, 74 or any other provision of this act. Now, in this case, ITC availed by B in his electronic credit ledger on the basis of the tax invoice issued by A without receipt, वो हम already discuss कर चुके हैं, as there is no supply, therefore by B to C in respect of the said transaction, no tax. Again same बात आ गई, जो पहला क्वेश्चन हमने रीड किया था A to B, क्या वो सप्लाई था? नहीं था. क्या पेनल्टी 73, 74 में हो सकती है? नहीं हो सकती. Which section can be attracted? 122. Then same thing they have told here also, 122 12 एंड साथ में 122 17 जहां पे वो आईटी से अवेल कर, ठीक है. These are the important point which I have to discuss. Now let's talk about 2-3 more point. This point I will clarify. हाँ, तो 73-74 की केस में उन्होंने मॉनेटरी लिमिट फिक्स कर दी थी कि अगर अमाउंट जो डिमांड है वो 10 लाख तक है तो कौन इश्यू कर सकता है? सुपरिटेंडेंट कर सकते हैं. अगर 10 लाख से बट अप टू 1 करोड़ देन डिप्टी और असिस्टेंट कमिश्नर कर सकते हैं. अगर अमाउंट 1 करोड़ से ज्यादा है तो एडिशनल या ज्वाइंट कमिश्नर करेंगे. ठीक है, क्या चीज है ये? बोर्ड हैज असाइन द ऑफिसर द फंक्शन and order under section 73 up to the prescribed monetary limit, not paid tax, not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded, wrongly availed, utilized. तो अगर देखो लॉ में कहीं नहीं है तो फिर उन्होंने एक ऑर्डर इशू करके ये लिमिट फिक्स की है. तो अगर डिमांड 20 लाख मान लो है तो, और अगर वो ऑर्डर इशू किसने किया? सुपरिटेंडेंट, देन ही डज नॉट हैव द पावर. एज्यूम करता हूं सीजीएसटी 20 लाख है, ठीक है. So this is the limit which they have given. And first point, एक अच्छा क्लैरिफिकेशन था, क्लैरिफिकेशन ऑन द लेवी ऑफ द पेनल्टी इन केस ऑफ द डिलेड फाइलिंग ऑफ द रिटर्न. एक सर्कुलर आया था 76, उसमें कहा कि लेट्स से कि किसी पर्सन ने जीएसटीआर 3 भी 3 महीने बाद फाइल किया है, 3 महीने बाद फाइल किया है, तो विल द लेट फीस बी एप्लीकेबल? यस. विल द इंटरेस्ट बी एप्लीकेबल? इफ यस, आंसर वुड बी प्राइमा फेसी यस, रीड विद सेक्शन 50. बट प्रॉब्लम क्या है? टैक्स कलेक्टेड बट नॉट पेड टू द गवर्नमेंट विद इन 30 डेज. तो इन्होंने कहा कि वेदर पेनल्टी इन अकॉर्डेंस विद सेक्शन 7312 शुड बी लेविड इन केस व्हेन 3P हैज बीन फाइल्ड आफ्टर द ड्यू डेट. तो उन्होंने कहा था द प्रोविजन आर इन्वोक्ड, द प्रोविजन ऑफ 73 आर इन्वोक्ड. See, provisions can be invoked only when the provisions are invoked. The provisions of 73 are generally not invoked in case delayed filing of the GST returns. तो 73 74 के केस में क्या क्या उन्होंने कि नॉर्मली ये इवोक नहीं किया जाएगा अगर आपका सिर्फ डिलेड फाइलिंग ऑफ 3B है तो. इट इज अकॉर्डिंगली क्लैरिफाइड दैट पेनल्टी अंडर द प्रोविजन ऑफ 7311 इज नॉट पेबल इन दैट केस. हाउएवर उन्होंने क्या ऐड कर दिया लास्ट में? द जनरल पेनल्टी कैन बी लेविड. तो what happened after the circular has clarified one thing कि 73 तो इंपोज नहीं होगा. तो उन्होंने एक तो क्लैरिफिकेशन देके ट्रेड को सपोर्ट कर दिया, बट जैसे ही उन्होंने वर्ड 125 ऐड किया ना तो जनरल पेनल्टी लेवी होना स्टार्ट हो गई. द जनरल पेनल्टी वाज स्टार्टेड बीइंग लेविड. ठीक है, ये वाली बात क्लियर हुई. एंड देन एक सेकेंड, हाँ एक छोटा सा चेंज था. Adjudicating authority means any authority appointed or authorized to pass an order or the decision under this act but does not include CBIC. Revisional authority, the advanced ruling authority, appellate authority for advanced ruling, appellate authority, appellate tribunal, authority referred to in section 171. इसमें एक और ऐड कर दिया नेशनल अपीलेट अथॉरिटी फॉर एडवांस रूलिंग. ये क्यों ऐड किया? क्योंकि एडवांस रूलिंग में भी आपकी एक नेशनल अपीलेट अथॉरिटी विच वाज नॉट देयर सिंस बिगिनिंग, 2017 से नहीं है बट बाद में इसको इंट्रोड्यूस किया था, ऐड किया था. देयरफॉर द नेशनल अपीलेट अथॉरिटी वर्ड हैज बीन एडेड इन द डेफिनेशन ऑफ द. बहुत पुराना अमेंडमेंट है 2019 का, बट यस आपके नॉलेज में, जस्ट आपके नॉलेज के लिए मैंने आपको बता दिया. सो बाय दिस वी हैव कंप्लीटेड द चैप्टर. एनी क्वेश्चन इफ यू हैव यू मे आस्क. तो बाय दिस नेक्स्ट चैप्टर वुड बी अपील एंड रिवीजन. तो अपील एंड रिवीजन में हमारा काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है, तो अपील एंड रिवीजन वुड बी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक. क्लियर? ओके. ये क्या थ्योरेटिकल तो है बट एट द सेम टाइम सम पार्ट आर प्रैक्टिकली एप्लीकेबल आल्सो. सम पार्ट आर गिव मी द आंसर वेदर प्री कंसल्टेशन प्री सपोज नोटिस should be mandatorily given or it is optional. Pre-SOCOS notice. Notice, is it mandatory or it is optional? Correct. It's not mandatory, but it's optional. Now try to think. नाउ ये बात तो क्लियर है, बट अगर 74 का केस है पुराना, या 74A में फ्रॉड केस है, 74A में फ्रॉड केस है, तो अगर उसको प्री कंसल्टेशन नोटिस इशू नहीं किया, तो डोंट यू थिंक दैट इट इज अ प्रॉब्लम? इट इज बीइंग, मतलब उसके पास में पेनल्टी पे करने का पॉइंट कितना था, 15% पेनल्टी पे कर सकता था, बट नाउ ही हैज टू पे 15%, 25% इंस्टेड ऑफ 15, 25। तो ये पॉइंट आप हमेशा माइंड में रखना वेन एवर यू आर डूइंग द प्रैक्टिकल। तो ठीक है, बाय दिस वी आर डन फॉर टुडे। We'll do the next class appeal and division on the next in the, I think Sunday को class है 28 को, we will have the class on 28, right? We will have the class on 28। एक बार चेक कर लेते हैं, just allow me 1 minute and let me check। So we have the class next on 28। आप भी कंफर्म कर सकते हैं, just give me 1 minute। करेक्ट, तो नेक्स्ट क्लास अपील एंड डिवीजन वुड बी ऑन दिस संडे 28। ठीक है, थैंक यू वेरी मच, गुड बाय टू ऑल ऑफ यू। अशोक जी, सर ये कंप्लीट है मेरी तरफ से आज का क्लास। थैंक यू।